I really wish that this country had better critical thinking skills. And I think that's the reason why we're in the place that we are, because we just don't have better critical thinking skills. People are just so used and so accepting to just take what people tell them, and then that's it, instead of doing their own research for themselves to find out what it is that they believe and why they believe it. I think that if we could have more critical dialogue, again, this country would be a lot better. But we're so hunky-dory and down to our us versus them mentality that we fail to see that type of stuff, and that's what's hurting us.
In the morning, I'm making waffles.
Whoever said orange was the new pink was seriously disturbed.
And when it comes to huge openings, a lot of people think of me.
Just call me a fuck ass.
Brilliant. Scary. I get nasty when I'm horny.
Welcome to Not Another 2001 Movie Podcast, a show exploring movies released during the first year of a chaotic century. And y'all better get your story straight today, because we're headed to court. I'm Josh.
I'm Slate.
I'm Allison, a little worse for wear.
Yeah, we're so glad to have Allison here with us. She's been very much under the weather, but it's so she may be some more selective in her insertion today than normal. But we're so glad to have her for this fun movie to discuss. Well, not fun. Fun's probably a poor choice of words. A good movie, an important movie from the year 2001. But before we get into that, we have a fourth chair here today for the first time in the main line. He's an expert, I would say, of the most expert person in this panel for a couple reasons, but obviously the big one being that he is training to become a lawyer. So, Slate, do you want to introduce your friend, or you want to have him just jump right in here and introduce himself?
Yeah, no, I'll introduce him a little bit. So, if anybody is a former podcast listener of mine, back in the early days, Silver Screens and Speakers, my good friend, former roommate, my boy, Antonio. We call him Tone. I'm so excited to have him on. As soon as we started talking about this movie, Josh, and we weren't sure if Allison was going to be able to make it, you asked, hey, is there a third person that you might have in mind? And Tone came straight to my mind, because Tone and I, ever since we were roommates, were always able to have great conversations, whether we agreed or disagreed on them politically. We could see somebody else's other side of view, and he's very good at articulating the way he feels about something. And so I loved that for him. He's also, had that podcasting experience with me. And then last but not least, him being somebody who's, I believe, Tone, like your wife's father is also involved in law, right? And then you are, just a few months away from taking your bar exam. So I thought that this would be awesome, and it's nice to. I thought this would be a perfect thing for you to shed some light on, and especially also being a black man. And I think that race definitely plays into this film as well. So three white people, we can't give the best light on that as well. So, but no, man, go ahead and tell the people a little bit more about yourself. Anything I missed, and have at it, bro.
I appreciate it. You definitely hyped me up. Like I said, my name is Antonio. Good friend of Slate. Happy to be here. Definitely happy to talk about this film. I think that it's a very powerful film, and I'm just happy to join along. So,
right on. Well, so typically, Antonio, and so I know Slate calls you Tone. Would you like us to call you Tone, Antonio? What do you want to roll with?
Y'all can call me Tone, either or. I just put Antonio to be formal, so I didn't know. So yeah.
Hey, no, you're good, man. I want to do what people want to do, and I know it's important. It's important to get it right. That's I want to get it right. So, so typically, man, what we do before we start jumping in the movie, we have an icebreaker style question. So this week, the thing I want to hear about is when you guys were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you can interpret that however you want to. I think that's a pretty open-ended, a lot of ways you can take that question. So I think it could be a fun one. Whoever wants to take the wheel first.
I'll go ahead and I'll try to be short. Mine is a silly story because I don't have any crazy stories, run-ins with the law, aside from traffic tickets. But I went to see Pacific Rim when it came out in the theater by myself because none of my friends would go with me. No one else was interested in kaijus and robots. And it was the old Lexington Green Theater, rundown theater.
Yeah.
I was cheap. Yep. I was a little bit late. So I walked in and I'm like, it's almost empty. There's like less than 10 people in the whole theater. And I was like, I'm just going to sit in this very back row, which was one seat next to like the handicapped area. 10 minutes into the movie, an old man walks in with a walker and he sits on me. I can't explain how it happened. I'm like, I don't know how he didn't see me, but I thought, because he was kind of moving in, and I was like, why does he want to move past me? There's no seats. And then he sat in my lap. And I was like, sir, I'm so sorry. Sir, did you want to, I'm so sorry. I'll move. If you want to sit back here. And I like jumped up and ran halfway to the front. But to this day, I'm like, I truly don't understand how he did not see that there was.
I mean, there wasn't assigned seats there, right?
No,
like at Lexington Green. So he just, do you think he just didn't see you, or was he just like, that bitch is in my seat, I'm taking it? Like,
it could be either or, no idea. But like, I was so embarrassed, and people were turning around looking at me. But yeah.
So you didn't finish the movie either?
No, I did. I just like ran halfway to the front and like dove into a seat real quick.
Okay.
Wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess for me, I've been racking my brain trying to figure out. I mean, I know there's multiple instances that I've been wrong place, wrong time. Like, that's damn near feels like my middle name from the time I was 10 to 20.
When I put this together, I had one in mind that I thought you might run to, so I'm eager to see what you say here.
Well, for me, it's gonna end up being the location is R.I.P. Tally Ho. And what happened was, you see what had happened was, Thursday nights in the college scene at the University of Kentucky, Two Keys had this nice little thing that we like to call Thirsty Thursdays, where you could pay $10 and get unlimited drinks, right? Wells, cool. Well, see, me, your boy Slate, I wasn't the type of dude that really just did that, because I was a social butterfly. So I knew the bartender at Two Keys. So she would hook me up, right? Everybody else would get the small glasses. I would get a normal size glass. Everybody else would get Wells. I would get Bacardi rum and Coke or Captain and Coke and could drink whatever I wanted. Cool. I stayed until the bar closed. And I knew all the bouncers. I knew the DJ. So I was just hanging out with them afterwards. So the bar closes at 2. It's got to be about 3:30 in the morning by the time everybody's leaving that works there. Like, I'm helping them close down the bar. Stupid, but that's what I'm doing. And there's no doubt in my mind that I'm intoxicated. I know for a fact I am drunk. So I'm like, we're going to be smart and we're going to walk home. I live at Red Mile. It's probably about a 2-mile hike from where I'm at. I can make it there in about 30 to 40 minutes. Cut some corners here and avoid some streets, and I'll be fine, right? And I'm sitting here thinking, like, you know what, Slate, that's such a good decision. You're being responsible, not drinking and driving. Look at you, man. Look at you go. And so I make it, about halfway there. And there's Tally Ho, which is, if you don't know what that is, it just closed down, but it is a Lexington staple where all the UK students go to sober up or fight off their hangovers in the morning. They either go as soon as they leave the bars or as soon as they wake up the next day to, get some food and grease in their system. And it's open 24/7. You can get burgers at any time. You can get breakfast at any time. It was amazing. Well, I'm walking there and I see a bunch of police activity, and I'm a nosy guy. I like to know what's going on. So I stopped and I asked the lady cop, what seems to be the officer problem. No, but no, I do ask her, what's going on. And she tells me to keep it moving. And I said, all right, my bad. No problem. I'll keep it going. And I walked directly across the street, kept going. I went up a couple blocks and I was listening to my iPod Classic. I'll never forget. I was listening to Sci-Hi the Prince, the Ivy League mixtape, which was one of my favorites at the time. Yeah. Dropped my headphones, my headphone bust, so I'm standing on the corner trying to fix my headphone. Next thing I know, 4 police officers roll up on me, and it's the lady cop telling me that I was not listening to her directions and did not keep it moving. I told her, if I didn't keep it moving, why did you drive up here instead of walk up here to come get me? And after that, I ended up in the paddy wagon and public intoxication. And I even told her, listen, lady, I know I'm drunk. That's why I'm walking. I'm a block and a half away from home. Just let me get home. She wasn't having it. Wrong place, wrong time.
That was the story I was wanting.
I figured.
That's amazing.
I tried to wrap it up as quickly as I could. It's a long story. There's more to it. But my mugshot was iconic. I was so pissed. Tom, what you got, man?
I don't really know what I have, man. If I'm thinking about it for real. I guess it's a short one. Wrong place, wrong time for me was I actually had a court date for a speeding ticket, and but unbeknownst to me, I also had a bench warrant out basically for not paying court costs. And so, long story short, I go there for a speeding ticket, and next thing I know, they're like, "Oh man, hey, you need to go in this room with us and wait over there." And so I'm like, "What's going on?" And essentially, they told me that I got to go to jail because I got the bench warrant. And so I'm going for a speeding ticket, and then I got to go to jail for something that's totally unrelated. And so that kind of threw me off guard. But and then Ryan Will actually found the mugshot online, which was pretty funny. So yeah, but it was so stupid. Wrong place, wrong time.
You can count on Ryan to dig up things. That's
all right. We had a free Ryan Will got out of jail bash. Remember?
Yeah.
He had to spend like 3 days in jail
for good.
For I think it was a DUI? And
it was a DUI. Yep.
It was like he had to end up going back to jail for a day and a half or something. Mm-hmm. And so we threw a welcome home party for him. It was great.
Allison's over here like, why did I hook up with this group of
degenerates?
Mine also involves Red Mile. So in drinking, we were having a small party. It was just like a midweek. It was like a Thursday night or something. We were just drinking at home and so I had a girl I was sort of seeing at the time over. So my two of my roommates had people over, and so long story short, we end up playing beer pong, and I end up naked outside of our apartment. streaking around the apartment complex. And it's only the wrong place, wrong time, because not necessarily for me, I didn't have any ramifications, but this car full of girls drives by, or women, I presumably women, probably people who live there, and just start shrieking, "Oh my God," because they were just so impressed with everything that was going on around them. But they couldn't have me. I was taken at the time. So no, that's so wrong place, wrong time because of the obviously the optics of a overweight naked man running around the parking lot of your apartment complex is not something you intend to see on a daily.
That is a normal Thursday night at Red Mile Village. So.
Yeah.
She's driving by like, damn, that's the third one this week.
It was quite a place. That's for sure. It was quite a place. Well, speaking of places, we're going to Florida.
Duval.
So we're talking today about Murder on a Sunday Morning, which is unique in a few ways, but the biggest way that it's unique in our series is it's a documentary. And right now on our schedule, in terms of our core episodes that are coming out over the course of the year, it is the only documentary on the schedule. That will probably change. I think there are a couple pretty interesting things that come out in 2001 that we'll probably get around to doing some bonus episodes on in some form. But this one is an automatic inclusion in the main series because it was released in 2001 and won the Best Documentary Feature Oscar at the 2002 ceremony awarding those films. So, what is this movie about? It is about a criminal case, a trial, and it's pretty, I think we'll get into it. It's very pertinent. A lot of the themes resonate into today. But it's the thing that I'm most interested in it, at least initially when I first heard about it, is it's a French guy directed it. It's a set in America, and it's through this guy who made documentaries in France. His name's, I'm going to probably butcher this, but I'm going off of it was Samuel L. Jackson presented the award at the Oscars, so I'm going with how he said it. Jean-Xavier I think it's Jean-Xavier de Lestrade is how. So I'm just going to say de Lestrade from this point forward is the director. It was a documentary, so those traditionally don't do that hot at the box office anyway. But this one had the unique privilege of coming out a few days after September 11th. So,
Oh wow,
it was,
September 14th.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, and there were two other movies that came out that day that we are going to talk about much later in the year that actually did well. So it, some of it's like, this is a documentary; it's just naturally kind of hamstrung. Where this movie really ended up getting traction later in terms of viewership was on HBO. It was, I believe, 2003. It was released on HBO in the States, or maybe early 2002. Because initially it was only going to be released in Europe, like it kind of in terms of like a wide release. So, which I think is also kind of interesting given the
I
topics
think so too. Yeah.
So what
I
is
wonder why.
what is the case? It is about the defense or the trial and defense of a young man named Brenton Butler, a 15-year-old black kid who on May 7th of the year 2000 was charged with the murder of Mary Stevens, a tourist who was robbed and killed in front of her husband, James. James identified Brenton Butler as the killer. As we'll soon learn, that was problematic.
Extremely.
I got a little bit of De Lestrade here in our notes. He studied journalism, directed, produced, written documentaries throughout the 90s. This was like his breakout moment in terms of things that people might have seen. Something I pulled that was interesting. I've never seen this. Have you guys watched The Staircase? It was really popular on Netflix. It was like a TV.
I've heard of it, and I've always heard it was a really good documentary, but I have not seen it.
Yeah,
same.
So okay, well, I was familiar with it I was familiar with the name, so I was reading about it. I didn't realize that so when Netflix picked it up, it was because I guess there were developments in the case, and they ordered like 3 new episodes of this series because the original documentary was made in 2004. So they picked, basically It was like 10 years later, they came back and added, and then the original show, because it had been in Europe previously, then that's when it made it to the States, was in 2000, so this 2004 show got a lot of eyeballs on it all of a sudden. And it was 2016 or 2015 when Netflix picked it up. So I thought that was kind of cool. It just kind of shows you one thing. I mean, there's a lot of issues with Netflix and streaming and some of this stuff, but the accessibility of in some ways goes away with those services. But this is a case where you might have never had easy access to something like that if not for just their interest and there's a lot of reasons they pick that stuff up. They see that people are interested in this kind of material, so that's part of it. But so we typically talk about the cast and the star, who's in this movie and whatnot. Obviously the cast in this was real people, and that's a big big thing, obviously, in a documentary, to have people that are involved. But what I think is really interesting, if you guys want to talk about this a little bit, is just how much access they have to these people. I mean, it's clear they were embedded with this defense team with this kid basically the whole time. And that was something De Lestrade, they had done enough in France at the time to kind of, they'd show their chops. This wasn't just something random that happened. They just happened to, they went looking for a case like this where, there was a murder. They wanted a murder trial with some unique, interesting circumstances around it. And you go to Florida, you could probably pull 10 of these out of the hat, unfortunately.
Well, the crazy thing is they had to be pretty Johnny on the spot because from the time that he's arrested, it's only 6 months before the trial takes place. Yeah. So it's almost I don't know how long they were over in the States and how much, shooting they did and if they were traveling back and forth. But it is wild that they had to be there pretty much from the get-go to I think fully grasp it. And I think it's clear that they do. I was interested in, obviously, I think the approach that he took is very, almost perfect for this film as far as, how he handles the defense and the trial and everything as far as, looking at the, the public defendants that are, helping try his case or defend his case, Brenton and his family. But as somebody who is an American, knowing that a French person is who decided to do this film, I am curious, is it because he's interested in how the American judicial, justice system works? And if so, why did he not approach the prosecution as well, or the police department. And he doesn't say, hey, they didn't, cooperate with this. But I would think that, and I could totally see them saying like, no, you mind your business. We handle this case and you can report like everybody else. But it would have been nice to see like their side of it too, right? And how diligently they're working it. Because from this side, from Brenton's side, and the way the trial pans out, it doesn't look like they really put much effort into convicting him. They thought they had it open and shut just based off of an eyewitness, right?
And also,
basically, yeah.
That prosecuting lawyer had no charisma. Lord, I couldn't stand to listen to her talk. But as someone who works with media, it was very surprising to me, the level of access and how they just let them follow them through the whole process, not knowing how it would turn out. Because, it could reflect poorly on the defense, but it made it that much more impressive to see the whole thing play out.
Yeah, one of the aha moments for me was specifically when they were in the jail. I think that Britton's parents had just visited him and they had just left. And then you see immediately the next shot is basically the camera following Britton back into the jail. And I thought that was pretty cool and also kind of interesting because, again, the level of access, it was just kind of, wow, they actually are with this guy like 24, or not 24/7, but they have a lot of time with this, the defense team and everything like that to kind of get a full story and a full picture of what happened. So I thought that was pretty nice.
And he's a 15-year-old kid in jail, like not juvenile detention center. He is in jail with grown-ass men, and he is 15 years old. Now, he's a big kid. He's pretty tall. But, like, God, dude, that's terrifying just to think of, like, a 15-year-old in jail, wanted for murder.
You have no idea what's going on.
Obviously didn't do it, yeah. And, I mean, man, dude, it blows my mind.
But you also have to get permission from the location that you're filming. Like, the people in the jail, let them come in, which also surprised me.
Yeah, and it made me wonder, like, because you brought it up, Tone, going through the just walking with him into, I mean, basically probably up to the point to where they just couldn't film anymore.
Exactly.
And I'm sure they had footage as much of that as they needed or wanted, but it did make me wonder, like, I just don't know enough about like open records and in terms of like that kind of setting, like what is technically public and what isn't in that situation, like, and how much permission did they have to receive, or how much was like, and so I found the DVD and was able to watch some of the stuff, and some of the stuff you brought up, Slade, about the prosecution, not like, because they are like, if you were going to knock this movie in terms of like how it's put together, I think that's really the only thing you, like, at least I would kind of picked up on. It's like, yeah, you don't get a lot from the prosecution side. Though given how it all plays out, I think it's probably almost better for them that it isn't like that. They're not more on display. But there are interviews like that are cut from the movie, like kind of more like with, not with the prosecution, but like with the defense with the prosecution, which is kind of interesting. Like they have some uncut interviews and things. So they are on more display in some of the special features and that kind of thing on the DVD, if that's something anyone's interested in seeking out. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't know. Like, and again, it's like 25 years ago. Like, it might have been easier to get that kind of access than now. I do think one thing that's also important. Somebody mentioned his interest in the criminal justice system here, De Lestrade. One of the first things that he directed, at least that I could find that he's credited for. A problem with these foreign directors is it's hard sometimes to pin down unless they're like really big names, to like what have they done and to read about it. So I had to like go digging around for like 25 minutes to find this. So it's called La Cavale de Innocence, The Run of the Innocents. It's about, and just what it's basically about child sexual abuse and mothers in America who are basically like trying to like, they are basically charged with kidnapping their own children because they're trying to get them from fathers that they are alleging have sexually abused them. So he definitely has an interest in our criminal justice system, because one thing that what I could find out, and from at least at that time, this was in 95 when that movie was made, apparently at that point there were 1 million plus accusations of child sexual abuse, and only 4% were ever led to an indictment at that point, which is pretty insane.
Yeah, that's wild.
So So I will say a little bit about the people we'll be talking about, just for the listeners at home who haven't seen this. I do encourage you to check it out. Pause the podcast, go watch this. It's like 90 minutes, pretty quick, easy documentary. It's on YouTube.
You can watch it on YouTube for free.
Yep. Well, and it's in great quality. It's probably better quality than the DVD I was watching, honestly. So James Stevens, he's the accuser, the husband of the slain, the lady who's killed. Melissa Butler, who is Britton's mother, she ends up being called to the stand, and I think gives a really powerful testimony that I'm sure we'll talk about. So some of the detectives, there's several, but the two that I want to point out are Michael Glover, or the one that I want to point out is Michael Glover. He's the son of then sheriff of Jacksonville, Nat Glover, who, I just put a note here. This isn't really, I don't even think this is mentioned in the movie, but Nat Glover was the first black elected sheriff in Florida since the end of Reconstruction. And
I think that was alluded to in the movie, but they didn't directly say it. But essentially, yeah, I think that because the defense, I don't mean to cut you off at all,
no, you're
Josh,
good,
but the defense essentially, I do remember one point where they were talking to Detective Glover, and he didn't want to refer to him as detective, but he made a point to question him about when he became a detective. And it just happened to match up when his father became the sheriff.
Right.
So
it's kind of sad how he's handled in some ways by the prosecution, and at least in my opinion, it's unfortunate that he's sort of in that position. But it'll be, I think that'll be the most interesting thing for me to talk about, like how that whole situation, how he's used, how he's deployed by the force, basically. So let's just jump into it. What?
Oh, I think you gotta talk about the star of the show, other than Britton, though.
Oh yeah, sorry,
Patrick McGinnis, man.
Yeah,
he is a character. He's amazing.
I blew right past our star. Yeah, Pat McGinnis, the one half of the legal team, the kind of the head of the legal team that ends up, spoiler, Britton did not do this. He had nothing to do with this. So
sorry, I just really want to emphasize that one of the biggest takeaways from this film that I had personally was that the defense was led by public defenders. And I know that there is a lot of misunderstanding about the role of public defenders, especially in the American legal system. But I think that the way that Patrick, he handled himself was great. And then on the other side, the flip side, you also had Anne, who was kind of like the opposite of Patrick as far as the way she conducted her interview or her questioning, things like that. So I thought that was a really good display of public defending. And I think that if people watch this film, it'll give them a different perspective on what public defenders do, and hopefully give them a little bit more respect in that same regard. So I applauded them the whole time, because public defenders don't get enough respect as it is. And I think that this really goes to show that public defenders truly are important in the community.
This documentary shows why we need them, why they exist, why they're important, and not just a punchline in like a cop show.
I agree. And to your point, Tone, I think that they complement each other perfectly in the way that they handle each other. It seems clear that this probably is something that I'm sure is not the first time they've worked together on a case, right? They seem to be a pretty good team as far as like, you handle this, I'll handle this, and we'll make it work. And going to your point as well about, the way we view public defenders, I texted you about this and told you, I think even before you watched the film, that like, I thought that you would really appreciate the way that they portray them in this film, because for me personally, I get the feeling, from the outside looking in, not somebody who's ever needed a public defender or had a public defender, but we all know the public defenders don't make the same amount of money that your high-end defense attorneys make and everything else. And for me personally, just based off of what I've heard from other people who've had public defenders, what you see and hear in news reports and everything else, they very well easily could have been like, look, kid, you're 15 years old. You have an eyewitness that says that they saw you. You have a written confession that you signed, whether you actually did it or not. Like, you might as well just take a deal, spend 10 years in and get out, and just, it feels like that's what most public defenders probably would have done. And so for them to just take the bull by the horn here and say, what actual evidence do they have besides an eyewitness and a confession that was beaten out of him?
Yeah,
Nothing.
I personally think that Patrick, this is my personal opinion, both Patrick and Anne, I didn't think that they would be public defenders just because of how well they perform. And I, you know, seeing in this film, if I didn't know they were public defenders, I would easily think that they worked in a high profile law firm with ease because they work very, very well. And like you said, public defenders aren't paid nearly as much as someone who works in a high profile law firm. And so just to see the type of dedication that both of them had towards Brendan in his case was just, it was absolutely nice. It was nice.
Well, and I think that probably speaks a little bit to why they ended up, like why this was a situation where they ended up getting this much access too. Because I think if you have these public defenders who, this wasn't their first, like they were, I think known at the time as quality people in terms of public defense, but I think even if you had like a private firm at the time, if they were handling this, if this whole thing played out exactly the same as a private firm, maybe they're more worried about some of those optics in terms of like, well, what if this goes poorly? Like, because I think if you're Ann and Pat in this situation, you're looking at it in a lot of ways when you get approached by a film crew. But I think one way is your profession. Like you're like, this can be a good, even if the case doesn't go the way we want it to and the way that we believe it should, we're still going to be able to show that like we did our damnedest to get this kid the right verdict.
Yeah. And I also think that one of the things that I noticed about this too, and I think why they, going back to saying the access that they had, right? Being public defenders, it's nice that they really just build their case and say like, we are going to handle this professionally when it gets in court. We're not dragging this out in the press before and trying to get all of this like extra fluff out there to, sway people one way or the other. Like we're just going to take it and handle it in the courtroom, which I think is something that a lot of people, especially like the private firms, they seem to always want to get their narrative out before the trial and want to get ahead of things and drag stuff through the mud and confuse people and all of that stuff. So I don't know. It just felt refreshing to see like, we're going to do our job. We're going to do it diligently to the best of our ability. These are the things that we feel are important and what like needs to be addressed. And we're not going to blow our load before the trial itself. And because a lot of people probably would have gotten out there and made it a civil rights thing immediately. Like, well, he was beaten and he was, and they don't, at least in this movie, they don't do that. So, I mean, as somebody who wasn't watching the news from Jacksonville in 2001, I can only go based off of what the movie is. But it doesn't seem to be like that they're dragging it through the press, which is nice and probably made it easier on Brenton and the family as well.
Yeah, and I think that kind of speaking on your point, Slate, their tactics during trial, they were very polished in that, like you said, they didn't necessarily drag it out, but they were also very, very aware of who the prosecution was putting on as witnesses, and they understood how much weight those witnesses carried. And so the way that they handled the trial from that point on, especially when they had Detective Glover up there, or Detective Darnell, it was just very, very nice to see how they delicately walk that line, so that they didn't necessarily like say that you guys are lying, so that way they don't necessarily come out as like, we hate cops, but they came out and like, you guys did not do your job as well as you should have done. And I think that's the only thing they should have done. So
yeah, that's what I love about it. And I can't wait till we kind of get more into that, is where the way they approach, like, how many people did you interview? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, who did you interview thoroughly? And like, just showing the incompetence of like, oh, this is an open shut case. And I really wish that they had kind of pointed it out. They do it in the deposition process when they're first interviewing the police officer who interrogates Brenton. Well, not interrogates him, but ask him, hey,
right.
We're checking the neighborhood. Have you seen anything? And the guy literally says, yeah, well, I'm talking to the other cop, and we're both like, well, it could be any black person. Yep. And he's like, oh, hey, there's a black dude right there. Let's go ask.
Let's go talk to him.
That's fucking crazy, bro.
They literally say, there's a black kid. It could be him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? It might be.
And another thing I thought.
Go ahead, Tom.
Go ahead, Slate.
No, can we talk about the fact that, like, okay, so you ask this kid, hey, where have you been? Have you seen anything? Have you heard any gunshots? And he's like, no, I'm just walking to Blockbuster,
Yeah.
and they're like,
For a job application. at
yeah,
that.
you know, and they're like, oh, okay, cool. Can you come to the crime scene with us in the backseat of our cop car and tell the detective that? The fuck? Like, no, if there's no substance there, you write that down and you get his contact information and then you give it to the detective, you know, or you bring the detective to him. Like, that is the craziest thing to just say, all right, well, cool. He says he didn't see anything. We really got nothing to go off of, but we're going to take him over here just to tell the detective the same thing that he told us, which is, hey man, I walked my dog and I walked to Blockbuster. What?
Mm-hmm.
That's a waste of their time.
I don't really totally understand how cops work, but if you had suspects, wouldn't you do a lineup or something and not just like bring this kid and be like, is this him?
Yeah.
Yeah, that
To
was
a man who
yes.
just watched his wife be murdered.
Right, a guy who's like just like
And who's like grieving and like out of his mind.
like that's the thing. Okay, before we go on,
Sorry, I know I put the horse before the buggy.
No, this is good. This is good. But I just to make sure our listeners are on the same page with us in terms of like the format. I just want to be formal, you know. Did we like this movie? I think we all like this movie.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, it's a weird movie to ask that about because I mean, it's unique subject matter in terms of like it's not like it's not traditional fiction. It's not entertainment. It's not like most of the things that we're talking about. But so when I say like it, I guess you can kind of interpret that however you'd like to because I think there's appreciate it maybe is the better word.
Yeah, I think it's a great film. I think it does a really good job of shedding light on, you know, the judicial system at the time. Sorry, couldn't get that out. But also it's relevant today. Like that, this film still holds up. All the issues that are addressed in this movie are still pertinent to today, important. They're conversations that we have on a daily basis, constantly. You know, especially like being somebody who lives in Louisville. You know, the Breonna Taylor thing and like how that was handled, and you know, holding the police accountable and things like that. Can whatever you believe about it, I think this film does a really good job of saying like, hey, we're not really trying to be biased. We're just showing you what happens here. Mm-hmm. And this is like, you know, it's just an important movie. It just, you know, shit happens and people get shit wrong. And, you know, I don't know. I really like the film.
And again, I think that's what's most important, the way they handled the prosecution's witnesses, because had they tried to attack them or impeach them openly and directly, I think that the jury would have taken that a certain way, whereas they were just trying to say, hey, jury, we know that these guys are respected, but these guys didn't do what they were supposed to do. What do you feel about that? I think that was a great way to just kind of let the jury decide, and so that way they didn't have anything else that's like a bias that creeps in. But yeah, I like you said, Slay, I think the movie was great.
You want to waste words right now, Allison?
No, clearly the whole point of me being here when I can barely speak is I thought it was very important, and I wanted to at least offer a few thoughts.
Yeah, no, I'm yeah, I loved it. It's a great, it's a great crime too to revolve around something like this. I mean, it sucks. I mean, it sucks that the man's wife dies. Like that's clearly, you know, it's not a controversial statement. It's sucks that this kid was just, I mean, racially profiled and just pulled off the street, literally pulled off the street, taken to a crime scene and asked, did this guy do it? Like, was it this kid? Like, that's fucked up. Like, that's fucked up in 2001, and it's fucked up today because that shit probably happens today, and we just don't like it's not made into a movie, you know?
What I found particularly egregious in that scene was how they had Brenton in the back of the police cab. And
which
so
already makes him look
suggestive. Guilty. Exactly. And then you have this guy whose wife just got murdered in front of him to say, hey, come over here. Does this guy do it? But then they also have him get into the passenger seat and look back and be like, did this guy do it? That to me was just really egregious behavior because, I don't know, first of all, the man, James, that's very troubling for him. Again, his wife just died. But also for Brenton, you got somebody who's you never even seen before, basically accusing you of doing something that you never done. Mm-hmm. And it's just like you have no power to say anything because you already look guilty because you're in the back of a police cab. So
and you're 15. Yeah. Like it's like you're not 25, you're not 35, you know.
Like Ann said, she was like juvenile defendants are very difficult to work with for a variety of reasons, and one of those being they don't have it's hard for them to articulate. They have limited vocabulary. It's hard for them to express themselves, and so it's hard to actually work with them and try to get their story out without other distractions coming into the process. So,
and he seems like a very shy, like silent kid, like very much to himself, like
you absolutely got that feeling, even just watching him in the courtroom. And so I'm not going to spoil you too much, but when the detective said what he said, that was very shocking to me. And I was just like, that seems kind of weird because you can kind of see how Brenton is acting in the courtroom. And that kind of contradicts what you just said.
Right. Two more thoughts that I have about this identification process that just like burn me the fuck up, right? Is, you already mentioned like he looks guilty because he's pulled up in the backseat of the car and the guy is looking at him. But like the main thing that gets me is, okay, you have your initial identification, which is the guy just had his wife murdered in front of him and like probably is distressed, not thinking clearly, in shock. He does mention that he's wearing like the shooter is wearing what they end up calling a fisherman's cap, which I can only assume is a bucket hat that like
that's what I say. It's
goes all the way around. So probably don't get a good feel of what he really looks like, right? Brenton's not wearing a bucket hat, I don't believe. And so now he's got a clear view of this man's face. Okay, he wants it to be the shooter so bad, right? First of all. Secondly, after he's identified him, why is the witness not taken back to the police station 6 hours later and giving a lineup of 12 photos and seeing if he can point Brenton out again?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, I think the reason why is because like
they know it's bullshit.
Exactly. They already had an idea of what they wanted to have happen. And so the way that they handled the case and the way that they actually investigated the case, I think was just very reflective of that mindset.
I think even to call this an investigation is a very liberal use of the word investigation.
It's more of a modern day lynching.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Even I believe one of the most troubling thing that James, the widower, said was that he would not put an innocent man in jail.
Yeah.
That to me, that really got me because it's just like, you know that you are lying. But the fact that you just want to put somebody in jail just because for, a vengeance, it didn't rub me the right way.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Do you think he knows he's lying, or do you think he wants it to be the shooter so bad? He wants Brenton to be the guy. He thinks deep down in his heart it's Brenton because the cops wouldn't just bring me some random black kid out of nowhere. Like, they've got to have some reason. And again, Brenton, also the other thing was, Brenton's put in a bad situation because they're like, oh, hey, will you come with us and tell the detective what you saw? Well, if he says no, he looks guilty. If he says yes, they put him in the backseat of a car and he looks fucking guilty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really hard to get out of that situation, man. Especially, again, you're a 15-year-old. You don't really know, at least personally from speaking my point of view, 15-year-olds in Louisville, I didn't know. I mean, I knew something, but I didn't know, like, if I got arrested by the police and they, forced me to consent to something I didn't do, or confess to something I didn't do, what my ramifications were. And so, like, being in that type of situation and trying to understand his mindset of, I had these authority figures over me telling me to come with them, and then I have this white dude telling me that I did something to his wife. I can only imagine the trauma, honestly, that Brenton experienced in that 6 months, because that was just devastating.
You can also tell the tone of these police officers, the ones that pick Brenton up and take him to the crime scene, when they're doing the deposition at the very beginning. And, they mentioned, oh, well, there's a black kid right there. Let's go ask him. And he's recapping the conversation that he has with Brenton. And he says that Brenton mentioned that he lives nearby, but the face he makes when he says it is so dismissive of Brenton. Like, it's just off-putting immediately. Like, you can already feel just in the deposition how he felt about Brenton, like whether he's a liar or a piece of crap or whatever. And it like, that was one of the first things that stood out to me. Even the first time I watched it was like, does he not believe that he lives nearby? Like, he clearly does live nearby, so what's the issue here? But he was just like, yeah, we talked, and he said he lived nearby. And I was like, the fuck's your problem, dude?
He was
that
walking
really,
his dog. He wouldn't do that.
yeah, that also
Right.
struck me too, because they were like, oh yeah, he went out for a walk and then he killed somebody and then he went back home to walk his dog and feed it. Who
He's
does that?
he's a serial killer in the making, y'all. Like
Yeah, it's just, but he's so calm at the same time. It just didn't make any sense. So
Well, and it's a robbery, but there's still $1,200 left in her purse, and he's applying
right.
for a job at Blockbuster. But
And
and
they
he
found the
randomly puts
purse
it in a
9 miles
dumpster.
away.
Yeah, that was a 20-minute
so,
drive.
yeah, so crazy.
But
How
so
do you have
yeah,
enough time to do that?
we're supposed to believe this kid went home, walked his dog, or killed somebody, went home, did his laundry, and walked 9 miles away to put a purse in a dumpster, all in the span of 2 hours.
I think that Pat said it very best during the trial, where he was like, so essentially, what did he say? I'm gonna have to paraphrase it. He said something along the lines of, um, why would Brenton basically go to put in a job application and then start a career with armed robbery?
Yeah.
That
Right.
doesn't jive, you know?
Exactly.
I don't know. I don't know. But again, I think that just looking at it generally and globally, the investigation from the start, like you said, from when the cops that picked him up from the first place, that was just very shoddy from the point, and it was exposed in the deposition. And I think that was when I think that's when the defense really got their teeth into the meat, so to speak, and were able to find something latch onto to be like, okay, maybe this didn't really go like it should have gone. Let's dig in a little deeper.
Yeah, I mean the way the defense, because it's like, I mean, I'm not a big true crime person. I don't watch a ton of this stuff. I don't get into like I never didn't grow up like watching Law and Order or anything like that. So my exposure to this world is a little probably lighter than a lot of people's. But I was so impressed with just the questions, just like, and how, so much of I think the content and like the material and the importance of what happens, like and the weight of the movie, is a big part of why it ends up winning an Oscar. But I also think the way it's shot, it is very interesting. Like you get a lot of long, just courtroom shots of the defense just speaking, and actually just you get so much of a deep look into just
Hmm.
the trial. But it is, it's a lot of it's shot on video. It's got that kind of so it's not like film look, but it looks professional, and it looks you're there. It feels like you're there, like the way everything's staged. You feel like you're right there up with the defense, like you're kind of sitting at the table with them and getting to hear like 2, 3, 4, or 5 minutes straight of questioning, and then spitting over to the detective or whoever's on the stand, and just and looking at them. I mean, saying the most repulsive shit. Like it's like in real time. It's like if I just stopped watching this movie 15 minutes into it, I feel like if the verdict had been guilty, I might have, and this is a 25-year-old fucking case, I would have went down there and started protesting at the jail tonight, like, because it's so apparent, like the answers these detectives give on the stand, like I'm under, a
Under
sworn,
oath.
like
Yeah.
oath. The
Yeah.
shit they say is fucking crazy. Like,
And I think going to that point, Josh, I think the movie did a great point, or did a great job, excuse me, of exposing that as far as, because again, I think that people on the outside looking in don't necessarily understand. 'Cause I know personally, before I went to law school, I didn't know anything about law. I'm not gonna lie. And so like, I never watched Law and Order. I never watched, any type of SVU. Not it wasn't interesting to me. But being more versed in the legal field now, I do think people looking on the outside looking in, again, they give the automatic respect and authority, or automatic respect to an authority figure such as a police officer. And so to see a police officer go on the stand and you say, oh, they're not going to lie, cops lie all the time. Cops lie all the
Yeah.
time. And so I think that was a really good point that they did.
I was going to raise my hand. So I don't
You're
talk
good.
over
Go ahead,
anybody.
Allison.
But do you guys want to talk about how they deployed the black detective? Because that
Oh,
was
yeah.
appalling.
Yeah.
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 yeah, so Nat Glover, or sorry, it's Michael Glover, right?
Michael Glover.
I mean, his dad is Nat Glover, the sheriff. So they get into that, like this guy becomes a detective sort of at the same time his dad is elected as a sheriff. It's nepotism probably, but whatever. Like that happened. Like that's, of all the sins committed in this movie, nepotism is low on the list. So Mike Glover gets called to the stand, and he's I think the most important detective in this movie because of Yeah, it's pretty clear like that he's been deployed as muscle. He's been kind of and
as
I
the
just
rapport.
as and the
Oh,
He's
he's
rapport.
basically
black. He can
deployed.
relate to
Yeah.
him.
That was, I mean, as soon as I saw Glover, that was the first thing I put in my head. Oh, they gave it a black dude because he's a black kid, hoping they could put the rapport. And he basically said that he came. I don't want to go too far into it, but like he came in and said that I'm here because to build rapport. He tried to talk to him about sports first, and then it, switched over, transitioned to more about the crime itself and the offense. And then when he didn't get the answers that he wanted to get, he went a different route. And that I thought was just sad. It was just very sad. You got a grown man, again, a 15-year-old boy who doesn't know. I'm just going to assume doesn't know much about anything because I'm just put myself in that place, and to go and experience the stuff that he did because he just kept saying that he didn't do it it was just sad. It was just sad.
It really is, and this film I have in my notes is a perfect example of like, and I know it's hard to say, but like Tone and Josh, you guys know me enough that I'm like as stubborn as they come. So for me, I like no matter what, like you have got to just stick to your guns and not sign a confession.
False confession.
Yeah, I mean, because that really could have been his like
Oh yeah.
damnation right there, and you see that multiple times in other documentaries that have happened now, or even podcasts like I think Bone Valley is one of them, and stuff like that. Which even in Bone Valley, I don't think he actually signed a confession. But my point is that like 9 times out of 10, once you signed a bogus confession, whether it's bogus or not, a normal person is going to sit there and think, well, if he didn't do it, why would he sign it? I don't care if they beat the shit out of me. I'm never going to sign it. And I mean, that's how I feel. Like, if had Britain never signed it, they would only have the eyewitness and that's it. And like, then there's nothing. And
that's what they knew. That's what they knew. I mean, they didn't have any evidence. And that's what Pat was making a strong point about, is that you took this kid to the woods who supposedly knew where the murder weapon was. But then you leave 2 other guys back with you instead of just bringing them along with, because the guy knew where it was. And then it just seemed like it was fishy that you went into a dark woods and it was, out of earshot, out of eyesight, yada, yada, yada. It's just crazy. It's just crazy the tactics people use, man.
Well, and there's an implication that he was threatened, with like a I guess
snapping the
Glover
holster.
with his holster, and that's the thing that would be my especially if you're 15 again and you don't know what the hell's going on because you're literally like
you just want to go
didn't
home.
do this shit.
You just want to go home.
You just want to go home, and you have a cop who is standing in front of you, pulling at their holster. They've already they're convinced that you committed this crime. They are like either they actually believe that you did it, or they just want to get this case off their books, and you're the poor sap that was happened to be walking down the street. Like, which is the more like I don't even know if the cops believe that this guy did this. I really don't. That's how I come away from this. It's hard to tell, but I just feel like they probably know that this kid didn't do this either, but they're just leaning in.
See,
but
I think 9 times out of 10, and in this case, I think that with the eyewitness saying it's him, they're like, "Yep, nope, he's in the area. He identified him. It is him. We've got the right guy. We just have to make the case fit." Like I do think that's what I think. I think 9 times out of 10, it's they think they've got the right guy, whether it's the right guy or not, and then they go out of their way to prove it, what by any means necessary, because they are certain that it's the right guy, just because they want to be certain.
And on that, I just want to finish with the gun. It's just it's not an impossible scenario that they could have just killed him in the woods and said he was fleeing police, and that's at the end of the case.
That's what I was going to get to, because again, on the outside looking in, I'm going back to myself before law school. Again, I was a blank slate, didn't know anything. So like on the outside looking in, people don't realize how hard it is to prosecute cops. It is very difficult, if not impossible, because there are so many exceptions that they get to enjoy just because they are state officials. And so, I could easily, now, again, knowing what I know now, I can easily see a situation where Glover takes him out to the woods. He unsnaps his holster. He could easily shot him and said he tried to flee, he tried to attack me. He can't do anything to the cop because now the cop has authority to use deadly force if he needs to, if he feels his life is in danger. And so as a 15-year-old boy, you just got punched in the gut twice, got punched in the face, and then dude on snaps his host and said, if you don't sign this, you're gonna keep getting some, it puts a lot of fear in your mindset. And so you get to the point where if I don't do what he says, more bad things are going to happen. I don't want this stuff to keep happening. Let me just do this. And I thought that, going back to I think Slake's point, I thought that personally, the false confession, him signing the false confession, was the nail in the coffin. I thought that once they had the positive identification and the false confession, it was a wrap. Even though I thought the dude was good, I was like, it's a wrap, because you basically just signed, and they can take it into court and be like, well, he said he did it, he signed it, it's all here. And I think that the prosecution even made a point to say that they even made another line on the confession sheet for him to sign, like, in real time, so they know that he is knowingly, voluntarily, without any promise, that he is doing this under his own will. And so I think that if the defense did not really hone in on that and say, what exactly did he confess to? What did he say? If they did not do a good job just in that small piece there, I think that honestly Brenton would have been done, because the jury would have had what they needed. They said that, the prosecution would have had what they needed to tell the jury that, well, he's already confessed to it. We already have identification, and he's not refuted it. There's been no evidence to refute it. And so I think that the defense, again, going back to Pat and Ann, they did a terrific job on really honing in that he did not sign this stuff.
Right. They pick apart the detective who writes the confession, and
Detective Darnell.
They're like, are those his words or are those your words? And how many of these are his words? And you just write confessions for everybody? And he's like, well, I assume, that most of them want me to. Well, what? Like,
they were
very coming out of that guy's mouth, man. He was the most fucking corrupt of all these guys. And
they were very slick in how they answered. But honestly, I think that they answered appropriately. Even though I didn't like how they answered appropriately, because, for instance, when I believe Pat, and actually talking about Pat, one of the best lines in the movie, hands down, or the documentary, hands down.
Oh, yes.
Pat saw Detective Darnell and was
smoking
like,
a cigarette.
You smoking his cancer stick, and he came back right in. He's like, "Yeah, man, I like to smoke a cigarette before sex." I was like, "Wow, that's confidence."
That is pure cinema, bro.
Best.
It is so good.
That was the best.
There won't be many better lines in movies that have scripts this year.
No. The best part is he even says, "I said that to him because I wanted him to know I was gonna screw him." He wanted to say I was gonna fuck him so bad. Just drop the F-bomb, Pat. That was a mic drop from hell right there. It was amazing. It was so good.
But Pat has said something about when Detective Darnell had told, either Detective Darnell or Detective Williams, one of the two, but they had told Brenton that they were going to arrange for counsel, which is his Sixth Amendment right, and they didn't. And so what Pat was trying to get into was like, he said that, so you made a promise and you didn't keep it. Right. And then the detective, what he should have done was correct. What he did do was he played semantics. I didn't make a promise. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, you didn't necessarily make a promise, but you said that you were going to do this. You did not do this. That's all you need to say. And so I thought that the way that they handled the questioning in the trial was just superb. I think that a lot of people can really learn a lot just from watching this documentary, man.
Yeah, well, because it speaks to what you were talking about. Like, yeah, that Pat and Ann aren't coming in and saying the cops like fuck cops, like they're out to get this kid. They never say that. They do character assassination through questioning, and I mean, like they these guys all have bullets through them by the end of every question.
Oh yes, yes. They can't wait to get off the stand.
And when Pat hits you with a okay, like that's when you know you're in trouble. If he asks you a question and he already knows the answer and you give him the bullshit answer that he knows you're gonna give him, he goes okay, and then he just rips you to pieces, which is amazing. And he does it, and it gets under my skin, like it irritates the shit out of me. So I know that he's like intentionally doing it to get under their skin too. He's like, I got you, bitch, right? Which is it's great, pure cinema as well. And the thing about this is, like, as I'm thinking back on it, and this is what people are afraid of mostly when you start questioning the morality of the police and their investigation and okay, if we agree that he beat this confession out of Brennan, if we agree that he wrote a bullshit confession for Brennan, if we agree on all these different things and we can prove that these cops are liars, everybody will always say, well, then you have to retry every case that they've ever done, right? And, you know, you don't want to open that gigantic can of worms, and that's why a lot of this stuff kind of gets open and shut pretty quickly, and you don't have a lot of juries and people that will say, yeah, no, we think the police acted incorrectly because, like, Detective, you know, Darnell, right? Like, if he's got 10 other murder confessions, now you've got to go through all of them with a fine-tooth comb. But here's the thing. Based off of their responses, their reactions, and the words that they're giving in their depositions and interviews under oath, this clearly does not feel like the first time that something like this has happened. This feels like it is a normal Tuesday for them.
That's why I said that I hated how they answered, but they answered correctly. And it's because they've been coached. It's not their first rodeo.
Yeah, but I mean, it makes me think like that entire department, like all of them need to be severely investigated. There may
I'd be worried about going to Jacksonville.
There may be multiple people in jail, prison today that those police officers had a similar situation to Brennan and that person didn't get off.
It would not stun me if there were cases in the courts down there that exist because of this movie today still. Like, absolutely. Which is sad. I mean, it's sad. Like, and we'll get into this once we get into the bonus features. I mean, but so much of this, I mean, it's not gone away. Like, I think, and that's something I kind of want to end on with just talking about the movie. Documentaries are interesting to me because, like, we can watch something like this and be so affected by it and see how just fucked up this whole situation is and what it says about, you know, it's just one person, it's one case, it's one police department, it's one trial, but it reveals a lot about the world. And I think we can watch this and be affected by it and feel things and then just kind of move on. Like, I think documentaries are very powerful, and ones like this win awards because of how powerful they are and revealing they are. But then, like, I don't know, I feel like so many times I've watched something like this or something that was effective in a different way and felt really strongly, and then just kind of move on and, you know, you do your daily thing. And it's just, I don't know, it's interesting. I guess what I'm trying to ask is, like, the value of documentaries, because they're clearly so powerful in what they can show and what they can bring to light. But I don't know. I feel like something like I didn't even know this movie existed before we embarked on this project, and that's fucked up. Like this should have been like required viewing in classrooms. Like, I legit, like, growing up, like high school, you know, civics classes should be like on every curriculum. And now, like, obviously, given the state of the country right now, like, you'd be thrown in prison for trying to suggest that if you were in a classroom. But I just think it's so. I mean, and this is just one case. Like, this is one example of, like, yeah, this was happening in the 2000s. Like, a very well populated city was lying about who accused or who committed a crime. And just, it didn't care. Like, it was like on the stand, like acting like it was no big deal.
I mean, even the prosecution, she said that, you know, if you feel that these cops have done anything wrong, then you should call your FBI, you should call your congressman, this and that, to let them know.
Right.
And I just thought that was very, it was a way to appeal to the jury to be disingenuous, because it basically said that you guys believe the cops, don't worry about it. If you didn't believe the cops, you guys would have said something already. And so I just,
it was disgusting. It was an abuse of power.
Yeah. But on the flip side, I will say that the prosecutor, she did do a good job as far as objecting, because Pat was very, very skillful in his questioning, but some of his questions were leading, and she did do a good job of actually objecting to it. But I think that at the same time, she could have did a better job in her case, because the evidence that she received before she basically set out how she's going to do her trial strategy and things like that, I think that she could have picked up on a lot of holes in the investigation. That was like, well, you guys didn't interview anybody else. I'm sure they're going to ask you about that. Why didn't you guys interview anybody else? And so it seemed like when Pat or Ann asked those witnesses about those, like, their investigation techniques, what they did and did not do, it seemed like those questions more so came as a shock to those witnesses, whereas I think that the prosecution should have been like, hey, they're going to ask you guys if you did a good job, if you actually did your job. That's kind of the basic thing. If you didn't do your job right, you can't do this. And so I think that she did a poor job in setting them up, but at the same time, I think she did a good job as far as objecting when she needed to object and making sure that everything was fair, so to speak.
I do think you hit on something there, Tony. Like, so much of why this case, I think why the jury probably ends up siding with Britain, as they should, because spoilers, they find, I guess, the person who was actually the killer by the end. At least, he's
no, they don't. Pat,
Pat and Ann find the
that I think
killer.
Was also powerful as well.
That was awesome. He is a fucking superhero, man.
Yeah, it's amazing. But it's so much of how, like, I think how the jury is swayed is hinged on basically, like, even if they believe the cops weren't lying, because I think you could probably have found a not guilty verdict and thought, well, maybe the cops they believe the truth. But, like, they really do an excellent job of just painting, like, these guys literally just did not do the basic things they should have done. And that was the biggest, like,
yeah, that was the biggest aha moment for me out of all of it, was when when Pat is interrogating I don't remember which officer it is, but he says, who all did you interview thoroughly? And
Detective
he's
Williams.
like, yeah, and he's like, Brenton. And he's like, okay,
Who
else? Like,
and
he has
paused.
Nobody.
Yeah,
and he's like, you pride yourself on a thorough investigation, right?
Thorough,
and
competent, and meticulous.
Yeah, thorough, competent, meticulous. And you interviewed one person thoroughly, and is that thorough, competent, and meticulous? And he has to sit there with it and be like, well, if I say yes, I look like a dipshit. If I say no, I look like I didn't do my job.
Yep.
and so
he responds by saying, I guess I could have done better, or perhaps I could have done more, something like that. And so again, he said the correct thing because he didn't want to, like you just said, Slay, he didn't want to give himself up. But at the same time, you didn't do your job, bro.
These cops were trying to put somebody in jail for murder using the tactics of, like, so I'm a journalist or a part-time journalist. Like, if I wrote a story and had one source and that was a story of any type of importance, I would be crucified by not the public, because the story would never make it that far, by an editor who's like, "What the fuck are you writing?" like just talking to one person. So it's just, I mean, the fact that this was happening in the police department, I mean, it's despicable. It's I mean, there's no cut and dry. I mean, it's cut and dry. Like, it was fucking despicable.
The most 2001 thing about this movie is that the Oakland Raiders are 7-1.
I saw that, bro. I peeped that.
That has to be said.
Yeah, bro said, he told his son, he said that the Raiders are, get the whole FC West. And I was just like, wow, what a time.
Yeah.
Was that Rich Gannon?
That was the last time, right?
Like, yeah.
Chucky's still the coach?
Did they end up getting? Are they the number one pick? Did they end up with the number one pick this year? I wasn't paying attention.
Yes, the Raiders ended up with the number one pick and fired Pete Carroll after one season.
Sure did.
Well, Brenton Butler, wherever you are, I hope they get somebody you want, man. Right on. All right. Well, before we move on to the special features, or the bonus feature, I did want to just brush up. Some things have happened with some of the people involved. Since these are real people, they have real lives. Our guy, Pat, has died. He died in 2021. I believe he was 70 or 71. I didn't.
He's smoking a cigarette. Like
I hope he was doing it right to the end. He died from blood cancer. I mean, it's not probably that shocking that that cancer was what got him. But in 2009,
too much sex. Enjoying too many cigarettes before sex.
We were talking about public defense and private practice earlier. He and Ann and a few other lawyers. So in 2008, there was some situation at the public defender's office, and basically somebody got elected. I don't know if it was a judge or a mayor. Somebody got elected, and it kind of caused some fallout there. So they left and then formed their own private practice. So that's what he was doing at the end. They were doing some private practice at the end. So he was still, he practiced for a little bit, and then cancer got in the way. But even up to the year he died, like, he was still helping out on some cases. So I think that kind of speaks to just kind of the person he was and what he believed in. And then Anne is still practicing, I believe, down there. So pretty cool that they're still out there. She was the only thing I found I did want to bring up that was on her, and I think she was somehow she was either involved or was going to be involved with the Casey Anthony case at some point, based on because I guess she was like an expert in like death penalty type situations. or is an expert. So that was yeah, it's probably probably better that she wasn't involved touching that one. I did want to read this from an obituary from Patrick McGinnis from another public defender, Charlie Kofer. Patrick represented the best in what we do for the people who are poor and people who need a lawyer. He was dogged. He was always there to help. I think that sums it up.
That's very succinct. Very nice.
Brenton Butler's family in 2002 was awarded a $775,000 settlement with the city of Jacksonville. They were seeking $8.5 million in a civil suit. So, I guess, enough things happened to where they just agreed to a settlement.
Yeah, I've read that they basically, their lawyer had stated that they would have liked to have continued the case, but just wanted to get it over with because it could be drawn out over a long course of years and higher levels of court, and they just kind of wanted it to be over with. Although I do think that 750, 775 is really not worth what he went through for that 6 months. I think
he's traumatized.
Yeah, I mean that's something you'll never get over, and everything else. And I have a question, real quick, Tone. You were talking about the prosecutor and her objections, right? What is she objecting to when she's objecting to the mother's conversation with Brenton about Brenton signing that confession? I don't know if you remember that, but like they're asking Brenton's mother about the conversation that she had with Brenton and why Brenton signed a confession and him alluding to them, I guess, beating him, and she's objects in the middle of that, and I couldn't catch what she was objecting to.
My only guess is it's probably hearsay, because if you said that basically she's talking about what she heard from somebody else, that's hearsay. Hearsay is essentially when you offer a statement for a matter of the truth and you want to have that in court, but you can't have somebody who's not going to be in court to be cross-examined say something, because it's not fair to the defendant or to the prosecution. And so if she's saying that, well, my son told me this, but then they can't necessarily cross-examine the son, which he was there, he took the stand, they could have. But since that was something that was a conversation that was between her and her son, and they couldn't necessarily corroborate it, my guess is she was talking about hearsay. Because I will admit that
conversation would have been recorded, right, in the jail, through the glass, or on the phone. Either way, so it could have been corroborated, correct?
You could have corroborated, yeah. I'm trying to think rules of evidence, man. You could have brought in that to help out, but more so probably not actually. It probably still would have been hearsay, just because what you could have done, say for instance, if it was recorded on video, you could have been like, hey, I have, you could have basically asked about the video. Did you go visit the jail on this day at this time to talk to your son? And that corroborates with the video. But they probably wouldn't necessarily still allow her to talk about that. They would try to show the video instead of having her say that, because they don't want to introduce any type of bias that she might say, if that makes sense.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I don't remember exactly what if that's what she said. If it's basically her talking about what her son tell her, I would probably say it's just probably hearsay.
Okay. Yeah. When she first interrupted to object, I was like, what the fuck is she objecting to? Like, this woman
you couldn't really hear her what she was objecting more or less. I just kind of could understand because of the questions that he was asking and things. Like, I was like, oh, you need to object. And of course she would object. I was like, good job.
I got you. Okay.
These last two things I want to touch on as far as like updates in this story. So a man named Juan Curtis was later sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Mary Stevens. As we mentioned earlier, Pat and Ann were the two who kind of ended up, they were, I think from what I don't remember if it's from the movie or something else, like a special feature or something, but basically like there was another case that they were working on, or that one of their other public defenders was working on, that led them to this guy. And
people talk.
Yeah,
people, especially in jail, man, people talk and they don't know to shut up.
They find his fingerprints on the purse, and the purse was never fucking fingerprinted before what are we doing? What are we doing?
Was at the very end where they showed basically the Jacksonville Police Department kind of not necessarily apologizing, but saying like, oh, we are doing our job now. And because we're doing our job now, we realize that we have the wrong person, or we had the wrong person. And now we know who the right person is, type stuff. I thought that was just like, you guys could have literally just, skipped all that and done it from the get-go. And then you guys would have been fine from there. But you guys want to just
I was gonna say, even then, if that's the approach that they take, and they say like, all right, yeah, we realized we fucked up and we had the wrong guy and this and that, that court case for Brennan's civil rights lawsuit should have just been open and shut too. Just, give him 4 million, 8 million, whatever it is, but like 750 is crazy. But like, you know what I'm saying? They openly admitted it. And when they did that, they probably had to say, all right, all the detectives that were involved in Britton's case, like, you are not investigating Juan Curtis's case. Like,
well, I think they all were removed from homicide.
Yeah, they all got demoted.
Yeah,
they
but they still work in the sheriff's office, though. Exactly, which is crazy.
Well, and then the last note that I have that also burned me up so much is when they're kind of finishing their final questions with Detective Glover, and they're like asking him, did you follow up? Did you do this? Or maybe it wasn't Glover. I thought, it was Glover. His words were, well, not my case. What?
That was Darnell. That was Darnell.
Yeah. Was it Darnell? Yeah, okay,
That was Darnell.
Okay, Darnell. Yeah, not my case. The fuck you mean it's not your case, bro?
Yeah.
Like, drove me nuts. Absolutely drove me nuts.
And then Brenton Butler, the poor guy at the center of this whole case. The only thing that I can find publicly, officially, we found what we think might be an Instagram account. But
it's him. We're going to do just like the witness. It's him. I know it's him.
Yeah, I'm about to say, I do not want to be the person that's up here saying, like, well, this 40-year-old black guy looks like it could be him. But it could, at least there's a lot of things circumstantially that make it seem like it could be him. Looks like he's doing great if it is him, but otherwise, that Brenton Butler is out there and doing great. So whoever that is, great for him. Our Brenton Butler, at least from what we know publicly available, he was arrested again in May of 2004. In Indianapolis for felony criminal confinement and battery. Basically, he had an ex-girlfriend whose family had filed a restraining order against him, and she was, I think, going to school in Indiana, somewhere in Indiana, and he had just went up there. I don't know if he was visiting her, and again, I don't know the details of this case or what happened to it or whatever, and it could have amounted to nothing. I'm just sharing the only publicly available reporting that's been done on this kid since then. And he was, I guess, 19 at that point. So as far as, nothing came up in terms of like him going to trial or any kind of, imprisonment for that. So I'm inclined to think it might have just got swept under the rug or whatever. So, or dismissed.
Yeah, it definitely seems that after this whole thing happened, aside from the incident in Indianapolis, it seems like Brenton and his family, for the most part, just want to be left alone and go on with their lives and stay out of the limelight. They don't seem to carry up a cape and cow for civil rights and justice, or
that we know
wanting to. No, yeah, exactly. But to me, it seems like they just want to fade into obscurity and be like, look, we don't. Let us live our life. That's a bad chapter in our life. Let's move on from it. And, I respect them for that decision if that's the way they decided to go about it, for sure. Allison, you've been silent for so long. I feel like you should say something.
Man, I'm struggling just to talk, so I was like, people probably don't want to listen to this. I have a completely unrelated question for Tone. As someone studying law, this case shows how important it is to have actual evidence. But with AI becoming so good in not only photos but video, what are you learning about using that in court cases?
So it's funny. I personally don't use AI. So the reason I have never used AI, especially legally, is because first year of law school 1L, they were like, don't use AI. So that was back in 2022, and they were just like, don't use AI. If you feed anything into the system, it can basically keep it there, and it can build upon it for its database and things like that. So you don't want to put any type of real issues or real people's names or real cases and things like that, because you could expose a lot more than you need to. With that being said, I've obviously heard a lot about AI coming to take people's jobs, yada, yada, yada. There hasn't been much talk about AI coming for like lawyers' jobs aside of like contract writing or things like that. There have been obviously, news about how some attorneys have gotten in trouble for submitting briefs that have basically false or non-existent case law. And so that's a really big problem. That's a really good problem. And so like me
That's
reading
wild.
that, it is very wild, dude. Me reading that and knowing that people are just actually using AI to just be, hey, what should I do? And not actually doing the research is very troubling to me because you don't know what you're putting into that brief. But then to get called out by a judge and be like, hey, man, this is even a real fucking case. What are you doing? That's embarrassing. That is embarrassing. And so I try to stay away from AI personally. I don't know how much AI is going to help in the legal field. I think that eventually AI will be a companion in the legal field. I don't know exactly how that's going to manifest itself. I can certainly see it maybe helping out like with just the court system in general, maybe like helping to make things more efficient or maybe standing in for a judge to help out something like that. But as far as like videos and pictures, I think that it just becomes an arms race as long as the people who are behind the judicial system are able to keep up with people who are running AI and can at least match what they like, they can flag something that's inappropriate or that's not real. I think it'll be okay, but at the same time, people are people, and I think that this is still a new frontier. So I don't know. I think it remains to be seen.
I, I think
The
part of what,
Jacksonville Sheriff's Office is loves AI
yeah.
right now.
Well, I was just getting ready to say. I think at least kind of the concept that I was catching from what Allison was asking, and if I'm wrong, Allison, tell me. But I think part of her question is too is like, how are you going to defend against AI in the sense that like, okay, let's say you're Brenton Butler in today's time, and I am Detective Darnell, and
Mhm.
I think you fucking did it, right? And I'm going to do my damnedest to find out to prove that you did it, and I don't have any evidence, but I can take your mugshot that I have of you, put you in what the witness says you're wearing, and now
Mhm.
create this video that is security video from the hotel that shows you shooting that woman. And I submit it and say, this is a real video. This is evidence that I pulled from the security tape. I've got you on camera.
And that specific
How do
instance,
you defend that?
you got to get expert testimony, bro. Hopefully, there's a watermark on that bad boy that says like, "Hey, this is AI." Outside of that, I would say you got to get expert testimony. Somebody who is well versed in AI, well versed in video production, well versed in media production in general, so you can cross examine them and cross examine and be like, "Hey, man, is this real? Is this not real? What do you see in your normal like day to day operations? What would be strange? What would be out of something that's not in the same realm as what you normally deal with?" So I think that yeah, just getting an expert to actually testify to what is and what is not will be very very helpful in that situation specifically. But I also think that hopefully I really hope that people are not doing that. Especially I just hope that people
I
are not
hope
doing
people
that
don't
in
lie.
legal departments.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that too, but
So.
like, I'm just saying that at some point within the next 15 to 20 years, that is going to happen. And it is going to, like, you know what I mean? Like, it'll be a huge brouhaha in the media.
But it's yeah, I was also going to say just kind of point out that it depends on legislature. The legislature has to be again in lockstep and keeping up with the times in order to respond to that. And so I think that again, AI being so new and on the frontier, it may be a good 10, maybe 15 years before legislature actually catches up and has to implement things that are responsive to how we should handle these situations going forward. I just don't know what that would look like right now, though.
I was going to ask you if you think it could lead to a situation where like video just becomes like not admissible in some cases too, because like if there's like reason to believe that that could be something that's doctored, like unless you can prove like, okay, we know for sure this came from like this security camera because it
Mhm.
has these, like maybe it's up to like the security systems to have like watermarks embedded within their systems that say like this came that are irreplicable and that aren't even known to the public, like things that you are just embedded in the video file
Yeah, the,
metadata
the
that
Exactly.
films are
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
have some kind of coding or some kind of fingerprint
Right.
digitally
Right.
to prove that it is legitimate.
And then in conjunction with that, they can also have to like basically a chain link to see who held this video and who held it last, and kind of see what happened in the intermediary. And so if there's some place where you ask the owner of the store that you got the security footage from, for instance, that when's the last time you saw this video? Did you see this in this video? Who did you give it over to? And then you can be like, okay, you had this video next from the store owner. What did you do with it? Who did you give it to? And I think that you can find out what happened. But again, I think that people just have to be really, really careful and keep up with the times. I personally am not well versed on AI. I'm not going to lie to you. So if somebody came into me with that type of stuff, hey, bro.
Well, even it occurred to me when they were showing, this is 2001. They don't have digital cameras, I presume. So the woman takes the photos of his face, and they're looking at the photos, and they're like, "This doesn't show how bad what he really looked like, and it's too late, And he was like, "Can we fix the resolution?" And I just thought,
to enhance it, yeah.
How easy is it, or do people try to get by with that sort of thing?
Oh, I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do because again, at the end of the day, you want to have the best evidence possible. So if you have a grainy photo and if you can just make it, if you can enhance it to show like clarify what is actually being shown to help the jury out, I think that's very helpful. But again, I think that so I'll also say that I was like in law school, I did a lot of transactional work. So I'm much more versed in like taxes, business planning, stuff like that, court contracts. Litigation, I know a little bit about just because of like my job and things like that. But at the same time, there's still a lot to go in litigation. So like evidence, for instance, I think that the evidence, I think that the rules of evidence are in such a way that it will be difficult for somebody to just try to bring in a doctored piece of media that they know is fabricated. Because I think that at some point in time, at least I hope that at some point in time during the trial, it's going to come out to where there's going to be a cross examination and you can actually get to the bottom of it. That's why I like trials for, because whereas like on the news, you can just have somebody say what they want to say and there's no repercussion for it. In court, you can't do that, bro. They're going to grill you and they're going to keep grilling you until you give up the actual truth or what they want you to say. And so I think that again, it's just going to have to play out. But um, it's very interesting. It's very interesting, Alex. I think that's, the next 10 years in the legal field specifically is going to be interesting how we develop and how we work alongside AI because it's going to be here and everybody's going to be using it regardless. And so we're inevitably going to have to figure out how to respond to it. I just don't know exactly what that's going to look like, though.
I choose Luddism. I'm not a dog. I'm a Luddite. Let's go on to the special feature. It's less a special feature this week and more just a fact of our lives. We're going to talk this week about white privilege, systemic racism, and a little bit of police brutality. All the fun things that come to the table. Obviously, so much of this is wrapped up in this movie. I've got a lot in the show notes. The readers, I'll attach this for you guys if you want to read this. I am a 35-year-old white guy from Eastern Kentucky. I'm not the person that's best equipped to be talking about some of this stuff and reading some of this stuff. The people that I'm citing here are much more well-versed, and I encourage you to seek out some of these sources. But one of the guys I did want to bring up before we kind of have our conversation is Reverend Dr. George Luther Cady, who is somebody I had not heard of before I was doing a little bit of research for this show, who is one of the first people who he didn't coin the phrase white privilege or anything as far as I know, but he was like one of the earlier people that was like openly in the public talking about ideas, kind of like this concept and just something. So he was a reverend. He was a member of the National Council of the Congregational Churches of the United States. And this was from a 1910 address. So this was was it during World War One? When was World War One? That was in the 20s.
World War One, 1915.
Okay, so right before World War One, we're talking. It's over 100 years ago. Just the first line of this: what infinite cruelties and injustices have been practiced by men who believed that to have a white skin constituted special privilege, and who reckoned, along with the divine rights of kings, the divine rights of the white. That's a pretty baller ass thing for a white guy and the at a church to be saying. Over 100 years ago, a guy that would absolutely be called woke today by certain people out there, I would imagine, because he was out there standing up for people and just basically saying, like, speaking the truth.
His next sentence is even more baller, though.
You want to read it?
Yeah, I will. If you're not going to, I think the next sentence is even more of a mic drop. We are all glad to take up the white man's burden if that burden carries with it the privilege of asserting the white man's superiority, of exploiting the man of lesser breed and making him know and keep his place.
Yeah, it's pretty.
I'm curious, when you guys hear that, what comes to mind personally, if I may ask?
Do you mean like the phrasing, or like what he's talking about, or what he's meaning? I guess.
So the phrasing, how he's talked about the words that he's using, what
So
images conjured up, and things like that to you
okay,
guys.
so I think he's. I mean, so we're on the heels of the slavery is still fresh in the country's memory. I think so. He's one. I think what he's saying is like it's sarcastic. Like he's like, we are all happy to be part of this. He's calling out a system by saying like we're all happy to be a part of it as long as it's good for us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're being part of this system that's perpetuating the basically the people who at this time, or especially at this time, it's still basically just white men who have really a lot of say in the goings on of America. And I think he's speaking from a place of like American, you know, we're still at a point, at least in this point in the country's history, where, you know, we're starting to become what we think of ourselves. You know, what we've kind of grown up believing of ourselves is like American, exceptionalism. You know, I think that idea is starting to kind of become more just baked into the language of the country. So I think that's part of what he's talking about. I mean, it's obviously, I think he's talking about just, you know, we want these black people, these brown people, whatever other people are coming into the country at the time. He's speaking, I think, in New York at the time, so I don't know enough about the geographic the demographic makeup at the time. Possibly he could be talking about Jewish people, maybe somewhat. I don't know.
So for me, when I read that sentence, and you ask me to tone, like, how does that make me feel, or what do I think about it? For me, I try to think of it more of like in a modern day setting, in a sense that I think it's still relatable today, in the message that he's trying to send. But like, I almost treat my race or white privilege or the way you handle racial discussions with people that are of a minority, and how they view, you know, racism and systemic racism, and white people in general who have negative views of minorities and things like that. And I view it from the same lens that I view being a man. And what I mean by that is like, the majority of things that like you hear about men and the way we react and do things to other people, women, like friends of mine that are girls or women, and how a man treated them and what's happened, like same thing being a white male, a lot of times, where it's like you get embarrassed by the way other people's actions are reflected upon you, even though the person that you're talking to, you know, like Tone, like, you know, like I know that, you know, that I have a genuine heart for people of all colors and races and everything else. But I also know that you've seen enough hatred and shitty white people that it makes me embarrassed of my race. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not embarrassed to be white, but I'm embarrassed of the way people that have the same complexion of me act towards other people. And that's how I feel about it. It's the same thing like with men. It's embarrassing the way that men treat other people and women, and like the examples that we have. And so like, I do my best as a man and as a white man to live to a standard that I think that all men should live up to, with my daughter, with my girlfriend, with any female co-worker or friend that I have, with any minority friend of any race that I come across, or even a stranger that I've never met before. Like, I believe that everybody should be respected and treated with respect and dignity until they treat you without respect. Then we can be disrespectful. You know, you know, it only goes so far with me. But my point is that like, I do my best to try to be accepting of other people and of all people, and treat people respectfully, with dignity and equal, because I want them to treat me that way as well. And if somebody's had bad experiences with a man before, I want to show them that like, not all men are pieces of shit. If somebody's had a bad experience with white people, I want to show them that like, you know, there are white people who do care about you and are friends and will do whatever for you, you know, like, and so I don't know. That's just when I hear that statement that I just read, that's how I feel deep down inside, is like, I need to be an example.
And just going back to, you said that you think that some people look at it, or you look at it as an embarrassment? Do you feel that people get defensive? Like, do you feel like others get defensive because of the embarrassment, as far as like they don't?
I do. I think some people do, and they get defensive, and they're like, well, we're not all that way, or this and that, and like, yeah, that's true, but like, you're not doing anything to like help that. Like, I'll be the first one. Like, I told a female coworker the other day. She said she was talking to me about a relationship issue that she had with her boyfriend at the time. That's no longer her boyfriend. And I flat out told her, I said, dude, I fucking hate men. I'm sorry. Like, I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah,
like, I do.
yeah.
I'm sorry. And that's what I told her. I was like, we're not all that bad. Cause she like came up to me and was like, you need to have a class on how to treat women. And I was like, whoa, what are you talking about? And she had seen a post that I'd made about my relationship with my girlfriend and how thankful I am for her and all that stuff. And she was like, I just see the way that you treat her and the way you treat your daughter, and other men don't do that. And it's very easy to say, well, yeah, I'm this great dude or whatever, or yeah, well, you have a bad taste in men and stuff like that. And that's not the way it should be. It's like, look, I'm sorry that you had that experience, and hopefully you can find somebody that there are other dudes like me that will treat you the way that you deserve to be treated. And so, like, don't give up on men, just like don't give up on white people. We're not all racist, bad pieces of shit. We don't all hate gay people. We don't all hate whatever, like that type of stuff. So that's just the way I try to look at it and approach it, is just to be as genuine, nice about it as possible, respectful, and let like, if you're going to get defensive about it, you're not doing any help. Try to be proactive about it instead, and just be, a light.
Yeah, I think that was a good point you made too, about, because it's very interesting how we don't necessarily get upset if they like, oh, all men are dogs. Okay, it just passes through. But then if we say white people are racist, people get upset. And so I just wonder, not necessarily saying that's true or not, but it's just always interesting how we could ignore a global like stereotype against men, but then get really upset when it's like a specific type of men. But I agree with you. Man, the dogs, men are stupid.
I disagree with that though, because like I used to be like, hold up, we ain't all bad. Like, no, we ain't all bad. Like, I would get defensive about it because like, yo, I'm a nice dude. Like, why am I single? You know what I mean?
I see.
You're like,
Yeah.
like you got a bad taste in men, and then I, I've matured and grew up, from that. But I'm also the first person to tell you like, yo, I treated some women not the best way when I was younger. I didn't know better. I was never the type to like dog my woman and cheat on her or beat on her or anything like that. But there's definitely times that I took it for granted and didn't, in past relationships, and was more self-serving than worrying about her needs and how I can, help her better herself and things like that. And it took a lot of humbling and bad experiences. Dude, I'm still learning every day. Like, we all are. So, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but that's just, yeah.
No, I appreciate it. As like I said, I thought it was just interesting. I do see that dynamic happening in life.
I guess if I could speak better, I'd give maybe a more eloquent answer. But Slate, I think it's really important to learn and grow and accept when you've been wrong. I grew up in Eastern Kentucky. I heard and was taught a lot of shit about different races, even about like women. I'm a woman. Things that, oh, this is just how people are. And going to college and getting older and realizing like this stuff isn't true. Using words that I didn't know were bad when I was younger that stemmed from some derogatory term, and learning where they came from and being like, I'm not going to say that anymore. There's perfectly acceptable words you can use instead. And I just think it's important for people to be a little more self-reflective and not always just rush to, it's really easy to get defensive because you're embarrassed when you're called out.
That's what it is, yeah.
But also,
I get so tired of that's the way we were raised.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way, I'm sure, I'm speaking a little bit for Josh. I'm sure you heard stuff too.
Oh yeah. Just speaking like just real quickly. My dad, not a good person. Would never be mistaken for a good person. And I grew up hearing the N-word it was one of those things like I heard it And I don't know, like, I grew up and literally I didn't have a black friend until high school, and that's because his family moved from Huntington, West Virginia, which is like the biggest metro near where I grew up. And he loved to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. So, and I loved, like, that's how we became friends, was through that. And so I learned a lot from him at the time in terms of just a different experience, a different point of view on a lot of this stuff. And so that was obviously a great for me to have that experience to meet him. But before that, I still remember, like, hearing my dad use the N-word and being so just put off by it. I don't even know if I knew what it meant. I obviously didn't know the history of it. I didn't know. All I knew is that he was talking about black people. Like, that was the only association with it. And it just sounded bad to me. Like, it was something, like, it just sounded bad. So I never said it. But there was like so there was a road in my hometown where they say, I don't know if it's the history tracks, but like the legend is that this road is where they would go down and hang black people. And they called this road N-word Hollow.
I know what you're talking about.
That was funny, man. Like that. And it was like just casually, like, people that would swear to their grave that they weren't racist, that they love everybody, church-going people would just casually use this place to refer to this road like they're like, oh yeah, we just drove down Inward Holler and picked up Betty Joe. Like, it's the most like fucking crazy thing. Like, when I think back to it, like how just casually this would just come out of people's mouths. So that for me is even more pertinent than like my dad. Just I can understand. I mean, he just grew up being a shitty person. Like, I understand where he was coming from in terms of why he was using it, but like he just wasn't a good person. But like these what I would think of as good people, it was just so weird. It's just so weird thinking back. So that for me is like the most like resonant issue in terms of like that's tied like to my personal person in terms of like the systemic issues of what we're talking about, because it's just wrapped up in the language of how my area of the country or of Kentucky spoke.
Yeah, even from somebody who grew up in southern Indiana, like a lot of similarities, right? You know, my dad had people that, you know, were friends of his, and my dad's used the word, you know, before as well. And so, yeah, you grow up hearing it. I've never used it in that way with the R, like, you know, it's just, even like when I was younger, lyrics to rap songs or whatever, I would probably, you know, when the song would come on, I would say it. I was a big Tupac fan, and I love, you know, like his message and stuff. And I think that he, a lot of times, had a powerful meaning behind the way he used the word. But now, like, I also understand, like, that word is not meant for me to use. It's just not. It never has, never will be, and I never, like, will use it. It's all, you know, but again, it's something that we grow and have to learn from, right? And it's crazy. It's same thing, like, you know, you used to hear the F word as a way to describe gay people.
Yeah. Now, yeah, if we're talking about things I said, like, I was running around in middle school saying that all the time. I mean, just because, and again, I knew what it meant. Like, I knew what we were talking about, but like, it was like, it was just something you did. Like, it was just, it wasn't good. It wasn't good then. It's definitely not good now.
Well, I mean, I remember, like, in middle school, anytime something was like you didn't like it, or something was dumb or bad, it was either, well, that's gay, or that's retarded. And like, you know, obviously those are not appropriate ways to view things anymore. And I am glad that we have, you know, gotten past that. Do I think that sometimes maybe we are a little too oversensitive with certain things? Probably, but if it's offending people, then be respectful of that and just let it go. Going back to that, it's so, Josh, you know, one of our favorite, Allison, I'm sure he's probably one of yours too. One of our favorite artists from Kentucky is Tyler Childers. And for me, like, probably my favorite Tyler Childers song, if not, it's definitely in my top 3, is Feathered Indians. And Feathered Indians, I think, is a beautiful song. I love it, but he never plays it live. Never plays it. And I've seen Tyler Childers multiple times in concert, and it's like, God, man, will you just fucking play the song, please? We all want to hear it, right? And for the longest time, you couldn't figure out why he doesn't play it anymore. And everybody was always like, oh, well, you know, it's because it's a love song. Really, it's more of a hookup song. But,
Yeah.
you know, it's about another woman that's not his wife, and she gets offended when he plays it. So out of respect for her, he doesn't play it anymore. And I'm like, all right, like, that's cool. I understand that, and I respect that decision. But when you think more about it, he plays other songs that are about other women at his concerts. So why is this one different, right? And right before Snipe Hunter came out, his last album, he did an interview, I think with Vogue magazine, where he's talking about why he doesn't play Feathered Indians anymore. And he hasn't played it for quite a long time. And he says in the interview that he went to a Native American reserve. He started to be more cognizant of just, you know, the word Indian and also other racial lines and tensions. And he's pretty much drawn a line in the sand on where he believes with long violent history and everything else, and his political beliefs, right? And so the Native American, he goes to a Native American reserve while he's out on tour, and the gentleman that is like showing him around the reserve mentions to him, well, he said, you know, at first he said he was a really nice guy, and like the whole time in the back of my head, I just kept thinking, like, please, God Almighty, like, tell me he's not listening to Feathered Indians. I don't want to be embarrassed, like, for using that word. And turns out he introduces his son to him, and they're both big Tyler Childers fans. And he just felt super embarrassed that he had been, you know, using that word. And he basically said that word is not a word for me to use. If they want to use that word for themselves, then that is their word and they can use it. But it's not my word. It's not for me to use. It's not for me to describe them. And so that's why he doesn't play the song anymore. But what he does do with the song is anytime that song is streamed, the royalties that come from selling the album or streams, he donates to Native American reserves and charities. And so, like, I think that's a really good example of just, hey, learning from your past mistakes and doing what you can to try to make the most of it. Because it is still a great song. People love to hear it. And if you want to hear it, stream it all you want. It's an amazing song. Like, you're not doing any harm listening to that song, I don't think. But you're maybe even doing a little bit of help now. He's trying to turn it into a positive, which is a cool thing. So, sorry to go on that tangent, but yeah. It's better to admit when you were wrong and look back on it and say, yes, I did that. But that, you know, I've learned from that and try to make a positive out of it versus just like being stubborn and say, well, I grew up that way. It's not a big deal, or try to brush it on the table or act like it's not a problem or just act like it never happened. It's better to try to make some positive out of it. And so that's just kind of where I went with it.
No, I agree, man. I think that honestly, most people don't want to offend others. I think that's just a general rule. But I think at the same time, people get caught up in whatever crowd they're in. And so because of that, they tend to do stuff that they may not do in front of somebody else. And so I think that, especially this country now, there's a lot of hoorah about sticking to your guns, and that's just the way you grew up. I think it's an easy way to dismiss other people's experience, and also to make it easier for you to accept what you're doing is fine. But I think I think it's right. Like, if people were to reflect more, I think it would do a great benefit, just because you'll be able to step back and see what it is, what are the consequences of your actions. And I think that people don't necessarily want to do that, which is why we have these quote unquote tough conversations. So
I did want to ask you, Tone, you asked us about that quote from the early 1900s there, and what it called to mind for us. What did it call to mind for you? What was your when you hear that or read that?
What was that man's name, man? It's crazy. It's going to kill me. It's going to escape me. Back in 1850, man, there was a white man who took up arms because he was totally against slavery. He was a true abolitionist. I want to say it was, oh my God, it's going to kill me, John something. But he and his son like took up arms, I want to say in Missouri, and they attempted to fight back essentially, but he ended up dying in the process. That quote made me think of him because it's like that guy I respect totally, and it really shames me that his name is escaping me right now. But I really respect that guy because he stayed true to his morals. He was a religious man. He said that slavery is bad because it's not what God has told us to do. And so same thing with Dr. Katie, that he is
John Brown.
Thank you. I kept wanting to say John Turner. I was like, no, I'm thinking Nat Turner. John Brown. Thank you very much, man. Yeah, John Brown is a great man in my eyes because he was very convicted in his belief. And I think that that's the right thing to do. I think the same thing with Dr. Katie. He's very convicted in his belief, especially in 1910, like you said, man. I mean, Civil War was just, 46 years beforehand. And so it's interesting, but to me, it's if I'm being honest, it's like, yeah, I see that all the time, but it's hard for me to actually say that because people get upset, man. People get defensive. And so I personally have learned to not even talk about that type of shit, to be honest, bro, because it's not worth it to get into a tongue match because you think that I'm wrong or because you think that I'm doing this, and that when I'm really trying to have an open conversation and dialogue with you about whatever. But yeah, so I guess I say all that to say when I read that, it makes me think of John Brown because of how convicted he was in his belief. And I think that that's awesome. If we had more people like that today, I think that the world would be a different place, but it's a lot of money and making people mad. So it's very difficult not to.
Well, that's, one, I definitely hate that you feel that way, that it's just not even worth the trouble of getting into a verbal dispute. But I mean, we all get it, right? Like we're living in a country right now where, like, literally as we're recording this, we're like, I think a week, maybe 2 weeks removed from the vice president of the United States, the fucking loser J.D. Vance, masquerading as the guy who masquerades as a hillbilly who isn't. I can say that hillbilly is one of my words that I can use. That says he's in a public forum saying that you don't have to apologize for being white anymore. And I wrote this, I dropped this in the show notes. I'll make sure that it's linked. This writer I follow, A.R. Axon, who, or I don't know if it's his real name, it's his pen name, whatever. But he is like, basically just a whole the thing about like, when did you, like, why do you have to apologize? Like, what are you even apologizing for? Like, it's a great argument. I've got some of it linked, but it's like, we're in this situation, like you said, Tone, like where there's a lot of money in making people hate one another. There's a lot of money in just convincing people that they should be aggrieved over things that don't exist. It's thinking of someone like Dr. Katie, who's speaking on the behalf of churches in that protest that he's offering. And today you have churches that will tell people like the exact opposite thing, like the exact opposite of what the Bible teaches you, to love everybody, to be there for poor people, it's a lot of things that it just boggles my mind. I'm speaking on behalf of the podcast here. White privilege exists. It's a fact of life. Like it is, and I say that because I am a progressive, woke person who grew up poor, and because I have friends in my life who would say like, well, they like, this is one of the situations, like when we talk about race and white privilege or systemic racism and white privilege, one of the things that I encounter a lot is like, well, I had it bad too. Well, yeah, you did. I had it bad. I had it shitty. Like, I don't like, but that don't mean that just, that just because I had it bad doesn't mean that somebody else didn't have it worse, or that their bad wasn't different. Like, to me, it's like, we don't need to trip ourselves up over like comparing ledgers over who had it worse. It's different. It's different levels of different spaces of worse. Like, yeah, my life sucked because I was poor. Your life sucked because you could be walking down the street and the police said, oh, well, there's a black kid. Like, maybe he killed this woman. So that's a different situation.
Yeah, no, when you said that, what that made me think of immediately was back in like the 1880s, 1890s, especially in New York, where you had a lot of Irish immigrants coming over, and how they were indentured servants. And so you would get that argument, well, you had Irish people who were in slavery. No, you were not. You were not. Indentured servitude is way different from American chattel slavery, where indentured servitude, you work for 7 years, you're free, you can do what you want to do. Man, you in slavery, bro. You are there. And then, like, the thing about it is, people don't realize is that the after effects of that system and how it still perpetuates what we see in society today. I think it's such a disservice that people don't want to talk about it more. I know I just clearly said what I just said, but I think that for me, it gets exhausting to try to always debate, because I'll be honest with you guys. I don't, ever since like 2016, I've really dropped off the face of the earth, because it's not worth it to me to be on social media. It's not worth it to me to interact with people, because between 2013 and 2022, there were just a lot of things that I saw that really made me lose faith, made me lose hope, and just made me sad for the country because of how people react and can't necessarily see people for people. And I've always thought it interesting that if we truly had extraterrestrials, aliens, so to speak, come down to Earth, and they would look at us as just all human, but then we would get open to a pity about white people, black people, yellow people, brown people. It's like, we're all humans. We're all humans. And so, like, if that really did happen, what would happen? Like, how would we respond to that type of situation? I think that the state that we are in today, it wouldn't benefit us, because we would just go tribal. And then, I mean, it takes me back basically to this one Twilight Zone episode. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Twilight Zone. That's one of my favorite episodes, or one of my favorite shows of all time. And it was the Monsters Come on Maple Street.
Yes. And
essentially the aliens came down, and they didn't do anything but basically make people turn on each other, because human nature is to turn on each other and become tribal. And so it worries me that we're so caught up in this us versus them mentality. And I think that some of it's fabricated because, again, the way that our society is run now, especially with social media accounts and everyone going to go viral, yada, yada, yada. But because people are afraid to have conversations because they don't want to offend someone, or because they don't want to, say the wrong thing, or they don't understand where this person's coming from, or something like that, it breaks down that step that people could take to actually ease that conversation. And going back to you guys' point, so Allison and Josh, I know both of you all said that you are from Eastern Kentucky. I got a good friend from law school who's from Eastern Kentucky as well. And what you all said, the only reason I know about that road is because he taught me about that road as well. Mm-hmm. But he talked about the same thing, where it was just very, very common to say the N-word, like, without, like, basically saying like dog. It was just like, it was just that common. And I always challenged him, because I was like, how is it that you could just hear that and say that so freely, knowing the history behind it? But then he would come back and say, I didn't necessarily know the history behind it. Mm-hmm. And so, like, for me, it was always difficult to understand how he couldn't know the history behind it, because my background, I understand the history behind it. But after having multiple conversations with him, I do see how, okay, maybe you didn't know the history behind it. But I think that people in this stage of the game are willfully ignorant to the point where they don't want to know. And it's because it's an easy excuse to say, I didn't know. And then it goes back to you guys' point, it's just the way we were raised. Mm-hmm. And so I think until the country does some real reflection on itself and what it wants to be, we're not going to get past that point. And again, we got a lot of talking heads like J.D. Vance, who says that, you shouldn't apologize for being white. I remember he also said something about, I try not to say it in the news too much, but he said something to the effect of, kids say stupid stuff. We should just let them say stupid stuff. But then a few months back, he was just like, oh, well, you can't get mad. He got mad at people criticizing his wife. And so it's like, which one is it, man? You can't be like for it when it's for you, and then against it when it's against you. So right. I don't know. I think that, and another thing, I'll just kind of end up with this. I think that people don't understand because they just not affected by it. My biggest talking piece is that it doesn't affect you until it affects you. And so, for instance, for me personally, especially being in law school, after reading some cases and evidence, sexual assault, sexual rape, that is, guys are straight bitches, like, straight up and down. That's the easiest way to say it. Guys are straight bitches. And, like, to hear how some dude can take advantage of that through force to get carnal education, as they say, it's just nasty. It's just very nasty. And so I think that to have people who also disregard that experience until they experience it, then it becomes a different story. And I think that we just don't have enough people who actually are affected by these issues, which is why it seems so distant to them. And so I don't know what the remedy for that is, but I think that if we could make it more palatable to where it's not just affecting this population, it's affecting everybody, we will move forward. But I don't know exactly how to do that. And I maybe just ramble, but
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, and I mean, something I think I don't mind self-criticizing. I think something my quote unquote side does a very bad job of is framing the conversation and trying to talk to people. I think about like having these conversations with people that grew up where I'm from and my family, and like I feel like I'm a fairly well-educated person in these matters, compared maybe to a lot of the general population, and I'm not even sure how I should bring this up with some of these people that are just like, because my instinct is just to say, like, if you just disregard this, like if you just don't think this is a real issue that we're dealing with, or some of these things aren't, like, it's just hard for, like, I find it difficult to, like, and it's just my personality is like, well, fuck you, like I'm just kind of like dismissive, like I shut, like I'm more inclined to just shut those people out, and that's probably not a good way to act. Like that's not a good, but I've also been the person that's been like trying to have conversations, and you're hitting that wall, and it's like, well, why even bother trying to keep having it? But we shouldn't lose sight of the people whose minds can be changed and whose minds are open to. And I think, one thing I do hope is that as younger people, this is more out in the ether. Because again, I don't remember having these conversations or this even being in the air when I was a kid, or even really 15 years ago. Like even in college, at least personally, I wasn't exposed to a lot of this conversation as much until like Black Lives Matter, and we're recording, like this episode's coming out on the heels of the Breonna Taylor killing in Louisville, and that's there's a ton. I mean, there's cases like that, hundreds that we could point to, but that's the one that happened in our backyard, and it's when all that stuff was happening is when I started really having more awareness of this whole concept of white privilege, and it, like, to me, like, I don't know, I'm just someone, like, I read about it and just instantly think like, yeah, like it just makes sense to me that like it doesn't, like, I also never felt compelled to apologize for being white, and that was like the thing that was like the article that I'll link to in the show notes is like who was asking you to apologize? Like he went to like some social media accounts and was like trying to actually actively ask people, like, when have you been asked to apologize for being white? And this is a white person writing this article, and it's just like comical, like that we have leaders who are out there like saying this shit, and it's just like, leaders, like because they're not leaders, they're fucking losers who just happen to have enough people in the country decide that they'd rather have them in office than someone who is a person of color or who is a woman. It's just sad, it's just sad.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest issue is that politics and religion have been severely weaponized in today's climate, and I don't necessarily know how we walk it back. And I think part of it, I think the reason why I am the way I am and the way I think I am is because when I was in 8th grade, I had a social studies teacher who every week we had a debate. He taught us how to debate each other, and you would pick a side. He would split the class in half pretty much, and sometimes he would let you choose, and sometimes it was more like 60-40 or 70-30, but the whole point was to come with your facts, come with your evidence, come with your beliefs, say your point, don't talk over each other, let the other person say their point, and learn how to argue in a appropriate manner and not turn into a fist fight. And we did like real social issues. Like when I was in 8th grade, one of the things that we talked about was a case that was happening in Louisville about, I don't remember the person who died's name, but the case was a black man got into a scuffle with a police officer, and the police officer for Louisville Metro, the Louisville Metro police officer stated that the black man tried to steal his gun or this and that, but he was running down the street and was shot 4 times in the back and killed him. And we talked about that case. Like, is this excessive use? Was the police officer justified? And of course, you had people on one side that were like, yeah, I mean, he was beating the cop's ass. And then you had people on the other side that were like, he was running away and was shot in the back. Where's the threat? And that was the side I fell on. But the whole point is that I think that we lack that kind of education now, where we don't have people teaching our young children and students at 14, 15, 16 years old to take a stance. You may be right, you may be wrong. It may be one of those things that's open for interpretation, but at least be able to hear the other side out, respect their views, whether you disagree with them or not, and be open to maybe changing your mind. That was the other thing, was like, you talked about it, you took your stance, you talked about it, then after we debated, he would ask people, okay, now that you've heard the other side, have you changed your opinion? Or what was eye-opening to you that makes you think, okay, I can see where they're coming from. I still believe what I believe, but I understand why they feel that way. And having those conversations are important, and we don't do that anymore. It's, you're wrong, fuck you, I hate you, let's fight, or let's shoot each other over it. It's crazy.
Something you just made me think of that I think can boil down a lot of this, at least a good chunk of it, is I think about, and once I read this, it stays in the back of my mind all the time. And I'm not even good at practicing this because I think it's applicable to serious issues like the ones we're talking about, but also like just your day-to-day life, like really stupid stuff that comes up in like you'll be arguing over a movie, like we will do, or arguing over something at work, like you think it should be done this way, and maybe your coworker thinks it should be done another way, and vice versa. How much our entire society would be better if everyone just instantly operated from a point of view of being willing to say, I don't know, or I might be wrong. How different society would be if we could all just flip that switch. But instead our egos get in the way, and that kind of runs the whole ship down into the water a lot of the time.
Yeah, Slate, you actually brought me back to 7th grade for me personally, where my social studies teacher did something similar to what your teacher did as well. But 7th grade, my social studies teacher sat us down and made us watch Roots. And so that was the first time I ever watched Roots. And I remember I heard about Roots before I had actually watched it, but I didn't really know what it was until I watched it. And I specifically remember the first day we watched it, and there was just like these two white kids who were literally just laughing, bro. And it was just like, that's so interesting, man. Like, y'all can just look at this and like laugh, But the thing he made us do was, after we got done watching each episode, essentially, he would have us talk about it and debate about it. And that's kind of going to my point, which I think you were talking about, Slate, is that I really wish that this country had better critical thinking skills. And I think that's the reason why we're in the place that we are, because we just don't have better critical thinking skills. People are just so used and so accepting to just take what people tell them, and then that's it, instead of doing their own research for themselves to find out what it is that they believe and why they believe it. I think that if we could have more critical dialogue, again, this country would be a lot better. But we're so hunky-dory and down to our us versus them mentality that we fail to see that type of stuff, and that's what's hurting us.
I think that's a great place to close the bonus, or a sad place, but as good as it's going to get here today on this podcast. We can't solve every issue, unfortunately. Does this movie matter? It's pretty open-ended. I don't know. I think our conversation has spoken a lot about why it matters still, but we can get into it. One thing I did want to bring up, there's an excellent documentary on Netflix. So this is, you can watch Murder on a Sunday Morning on YouTube at home, and on Netflix. So this episode, if I'm remembering right, it's coming out right after the Oscar. So it might be an Oscar or right around before. I don't remember. Ignore me, listeners, if I'm misspeaking. But I'm pretty sure this documentary, A Perfect Neighbor, will be nominated for an Oscar. I would be surprised if it isn't, and it might win the Oscar. It's very, I would say, without spoiling anything, it's an incredible double feature with this movie. The entire movie is, basically 95% of the footage is body cam footage that was obtained through public records, and it's another incident it's in Florida. I think it might be in Jacksonville also, actually. Without spoiling it, I will say these police officers are a lot more competent, is how I would frame it. So I encourage everybody to watch that because I think it's an incredible companion piece. It kind of speaks to almost its existence speaks to why this movie we're talking about matters, is because unfortunately these are issues that we're still dealing with.
Yeah, I would just simply say we would not be talking for 2 hours and 15 minutes on this, together if this film didn't matter, right? I mean, I know we're going to clip it and cut it and shorten it because we don't want it to be extremely long. But I think everything, even the stuff that gets cut out, is important information and dialogue that we've shared today. So, yeah, absolutely it matters.
Yeah, I would agree. This movie matters. And I always think that telling stories like this matters. So this movie matters in 2001. It still matters now.
Yeah, I piggyback on that as well. It's kind of funny, actually, too, Slade. I was literally, I'm not going to lie to you, man. Yesterday, I started watching the movie maybe around like 12:30, right after the Ravens lost and shit. And so I was already in like a pissy mood. But like I said, I try not to touch these type of topics and subjects just because it's just traumatizing to me. I don't like seeing, racial profile. I don't like seeing people get taken advantage of just because they don't know or they're ignorant of what it is they can do. And so I was actually probably about 10 minutes into the movie. I was about to say, I can't even do it, Slate, because this is too heavy for me. But as I watched more and more of it, I got a sense that, no, this actually is good. And I'm happy that I did watch it because, again, I got to see Pat, got to see Ann in action. I think they did a great job against public defenders. For that reason alone, I think that the movie is an A++, just because it shows public defenders in a different light that, again, the American public may not see them as. There's so many instances where, especially in popular culture, where the public defender, if you have a public defender, you're automatically going to jail. That's not necessarily the case. Like you can have a high profile lawyer and still go to jail. It doesn't matter. It just depends on how well they actually articulate the facts in your favor. And so I think this movie matters. But if I'm speaking honestly, I don't think that this movie would gain much attention today just because of how polarized we are. And that's sad because people will basically look at this movie as saying like, oh, well, it's either just a one-off thing. These cops are just bad apples, as they like to say, or this doesn't really change anything because he probably, I guess
they'll say, well, he's still went to jail for intimidating his girlfriend.
Exactly. So they'll still find somebody else. He's still a bad guy. And so, like, I think that people, at the end of the day, people can attach whatever label they want to attach to something. I wish that we were in a better place societally where we could have these open conversations. Like this could be shown at a drive-in, for instance, and then we could have like open dialogue on Twitter or something like that. But the way that I view the country now, I don't think that's possible. However, I do think the movie is great. I just don't think I think that the majority of the population would not appreciate the movie, if I'm being honest. I think that even, honestly, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. I would just keep it at, I think that the majority of the population would not appreciate the movie as much as it should be appreciated just because of they already have an idea about what happened. They already have an idea about cops are good, bad guys are bad. And you even see it in like shows like Law and Order. My mom watches that religiously. I remember I was taking criminal law, and she was like, "Don't become a defendant or a defense attorney." And I was just like, "I hope that you don't get charged with something that you did not do, because you're going to need that defense attorney, and you might need a public defender." And so, like, this movie is very powerful in that instance, but people just are very locked into what they think they know. And again, going back to our piece about critical thinking, I don't think people are having that type of dialogue internally to be able to say, maybe I should check this out more to learn more about it. So that's my two piece. I think that's a great movie, but I don't think that it was good. I don't think that it would get appreciated as much as it should just because of the type of climate that we're in right now. That makes sense.
Well, I think that's a good point just because I'm not even sure of how well it was appreciated when it came out, when it was probably even more shocking than it would seem today. I mean, it didn't do banger at the box office. It was kind of dropped on HBO. And I mean, I hadn't heard about it until we embarked on this project. And it seems like, again, I repeat, like it's like something that you should be showing in civics classes. And so, yeah, it's tough to think. The material certainly matters, but the impact it could have sucks, but it probably would be minimal.
Well, I hate that you guys feel that way, but I understand, why you feel that way. But to me, I don't think that just because that's probably the case, more than likely the case, can be the case, doesn't mean that we should stop sharing and talking about this movie and stop fighting the good fight that this movie is trying to fight. So, I think that that's the important thing about this, because it's very easily Brenton and his defense team could have done the same thing, Tone, where, well, I'm not going to get off of this, right? Like, I've got a confession. Most people aren't going to change their minds how they view this. But Pat and them stood firm and stood on business and went about it the right way and were able to prove their case. And so I think that you take that same approach with the film that they take and do the best you can with it to try to show people what the movie's all about. And I think that's the heart of the film right there.
I agree. I think that if we could somehow get this documentary into middle schools, particularly like 7th and 8th grade, it would have an enormous impact. But again, I think it's just a lot of red tape and politics that you would have to wade through. And I think that would be the exhausting part. But I wish that we could somehow have this movie shown, just because I think it would help to illuminate just issues that people may not think about are issues,
Yeah, it's been on YouTube for, I think, a little over a year, less than 2 years. I think the last time I checked, it only had like 15,000 views.
Oh, let's get that up, people. Let's
it wasn't much. It wasn't much. But the comments were actually pretty good, because they were talking about how people actually knew, or they remembered the story and things like that from when it came back in 2000, 2001 in Jacksonville. So I thought that was really nice that they had some type of connection to it. But yeah, it's not. We need to get more views up on YouTube for sure.
Share this movie, listeners. And this is the last thing we didn't talk a lot about the filmmaking proper, which, I mean, again, the subject's way too interesting to go too deep into the filmmaking. But like, this movie again it's a lot of it's shot on video. It's like, and it's court access, and like this fucking thing won an Oscar. Like, so it's like, if you're out there, if you're someone who just wants to make movies, like, this is something. Just even disregard like how great the material is and what it's trying to say. Just like look at how it looks and think like, if I do something really powerful with the meaning that's well told, or well put together, well edited, it doesn't have to look like $1 million. I can make good movies, make powerful movies, and they don't have to look like they've been run through a glossy filter.
Cue Paranormal Activity.
Yeah.
Those movies suck.
The first one was good.
First one is really good.
Yeah, the rest of them, they kind of go downhill, try to drag it out. But yeah, first one was really good.
Meh.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you, listeners, for joining us. I know today was heavier than usual, but I think it's important that we have these conversations. I think it's important that we recognize the value of having these conversations amongst ourselves and with our friends and family and whoever else we want to try to have them with. Write your politicians, write your local congressmen, send them. Let's do a local, try to drive this at home, remind everybody out there serving Congress of this movie, and just to get it on their radars again. Beyond that, once things go out of the limelight, like these things go out the news cycle, I think that we're all subject to just kind of riding along with whatever's going on in the world, and so it's good to be reminded of things like this. Otherwise, I'm speaking for myself. I think if we don't keep these things top of mind, eventually authority will come for us all. So, unless we happen to be, white billionaires.
Tone, man, just wanted to say, dude, appreciate you coming in and shedding some light on your perspective, not only as a black man, but as a man who's studying law as well. Mm-hmm. And, I love you, brother, and it's always great to see you and glad that we can have this conversation. So appreciate you, bro, for real.
Definitely, man. I hope that I was able to bring some value to the conversation, not just ramble a lot. But I appreciate you guys having me on as well. It was really, really enlightening. And I appreciate you guys' comments and the conversation that we had, because it was very nice. And again, it was just open dialogue that I think is needed in this country. So
No, yeah, I appreciate you coming on. Again, I know it was a short notice kind of situation a little bit for you, and so I'm glad you were able to brave through even with the Ravens loss. I was actually rooting for you guys because I fucking hate Aaron Rodgers, so I was hoping.
Me too, man. Me too.
I like Lamar. Yeah, like I'm not the, I'm a UK fan, and I rooted against Lamar a lot, but he's a lot of fun to watch in the NFL. So I was hoping that they would get it and kind of sneak in there. I also do want to say, like, I immediately, like, I know, like, people can point to, like, we'll listen to this, like, oh, so you had the black guy on to talk about the black kid going to jail. And that's the optics of that. Like, I'm aware of that. And, like, that's kind of shitty. So I appreciate you coming on in spite of that. And obviously, I hope we can have you back to talk about something else, something more fun, down the road. Because obviously, I know you have a history with Slate, and we've met in passing in the past. So I obviously you do a fantastic job just talking about movies. So I hope we can have you back sometime.
Definitely appreciate
Pick anything from 2001, bro.
If only we had drafted Legally Blonde, another law movie.
Yeah, let's turn on Legally Blonde.
Yeah.
You would not believe actually how many people cite Legally Blonde as their favorite movie in law school. I'm not going to joke.
Oh, God.
Females love Legally Blonde. I'm not going to lie.
We might.
And I hope that's not being stereotypical. I apologize if I just said that the way. Just for my
we just did a whole podcast about this, bro.
My personal observation in law school has led me to that belief, so I apologize if that's stereotypical. I really do. But white women love Legally Blonde.
There we go. Well, yeah. That's a good place to go, and I know, you're not aware of this, Antonio. So we drafted a lot of movies to start this show, and Legally Blonde's like one of the biggest movies that came out this year. Didn't make our cut. Didn't make our fucking top 30.
Wonder why.
So we're going to rectify that at some point. So yeah, if you want to come back for Legally Blonde, we can certainly have you in the mix there. Or could I interest you in let's see, Black Knight? That's one of our.
Oh Lord. Martin Lawrence.
What are some of your favorite movies off the top of your head from this year? Do you have anything that comes to mind right away?
From 2001?
Oh man, you'd have to like go through.
I would have to be honest. I'm not even sure to be honest.
I know one of them because we quoted it all the time back in the day. Training Day.
Oh yeah.
Training Day
Training
is
Day
dope.
came out in 01?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Training Day came out in 01.
Damn, that's crazy.
No, yeah, you got Training Day, Fast and Furious, which we've already done that. Trying to think. Some of the Jeepers Creepers. I don't know if you ever really was into horror, but Jeepers
like
Creepers
Jeepers,
was one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, all right.
That's also
Devil's
a time that
Backbone.
you had like you had a lot of teen movies coming out around that time too. I remember, so that's why I'm like kind of fuzzy. I remember like the first thing that came to mind was Not Another Teen Movie.
Yeah, Not Another Teen Movie was 2001. Obviously, podcast. You had American Pie 2 as well.
Scary Movie.
Zoolander. Yeah, Scary Movie.
Scary Movie was comedy. Actually, now I think about it. So yeah, that's an honorable.
I'm the Scary Movie person on this show, I think. So we might have to. Maybe we can work that one in. We can find a spot for you. Well, I'm again.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I thought Slate was reading something. Or we're gonna.
No, I was reading something. I'm
just
looking
his
at
ass up over there over nothing. He's not even gonna tell us what it was.
I'm reading the show notes and I'm looking at what we're doing next week and how we're attempting to lighten the mood.
Okay. Yeah, Allison. What's on deck next week? We're going to lighten the mood by talking about schizophrenia.
Doing it out of order, I totally forgot that when this airs, mine will be the next one. I am unprepared.
Yeah, so what's happening, listeners? So we're recording this episode. It is January 5th, right on the eve of our actually it was the eve of our podcast, our official first episode, and the eve of what some of the people we've alluded to in this conversation's favorite holiday, January 6th. So,
crazy. It's been 5 years. Man. That's crazy.
That's wild.
That is wild.
Yep, it sure is. So Allison's next is the next episode you will hear is about A Beautiful Mind.
A Beautiful Mind, the most milquetoast Oscar winner of all time. My God. That movie is like mayonnaise on white bread.
And so what we're going to do there, when you hear that episode, it'll be a little unique. We're going to record that. So we're recording a lot of these in advance, but we were going to be recording that episode the week. It'll be a couple days after the Oscar, or it might be the day after the Oscar ceremony from 2026. So we'll probably talk a lot about the current Oscar winners, like kind of just one from the past year. So that'll be a little different, something a little fun for us for you next week. You'll be hearing something a little bit more contemporary to the times than what we've been doing. But unfortunately, I think this episode will be contemporary to the times for a long time coming in terms of the topics. So we'll leave that where it is. But for now, you got anything else? Anybody, any final parting thoughts before we sign off here?
I'm good.
Right on. Well, oh, sorry, I stepped right on you, Allison. I just assumed you wouldn't want to talk.
I was going to say, if you've made it this far listening to me, I'm so sorry. Hopefully, back in action next week.
If you still sound like this 2 months from now, I'm going to be...
It'd be crazy,
That'd be
bro.
concerning.
Cool. Well, look for us. Links to the show notes. Again, there's a lot of cool reading I think people should check out in the show notes. Links to all our social places, subscribe, review, etc., etc. You know the drill. Please do all that stuff and say nice things and be civil in the comments. I expect our listenership to be the kind that will be open to conversations like these, but you never know. And if you're an asshole, I will block you and make sure you never get to engage with our content again. So, on that happy note, make sure you know your rights and record everything. Bye.
Holla back, youngin'. Ooh, ooh.